everyone, welcome to GameFace episode 164 on Sifted Games at sifted.net. We got a great show for you guys tonight. Just some quick housekeeping before we get going. A lot of you patrons, you need to check your inboxes on Patreon. I've been trying to reach out to you guys to get your mailing addresses to send you guys stickers. I think maybe half of the people that we reached out to have actually responded so far. So make sure you check your inbox on Patreon. If you're pledging $15 or more per month, we are waiting to send you some fun stuff. So please do that. Folks who are on YouTube, totally cool that you're watching it on YouTube for free, but if you can, it'd be great if you could help us with Twitch Prime. It's completely free. You can give us $2.50 for doing pretty much nothing. All the directions are down below in the description, and we would really appreciate it. It's been a slow week in games, but a big week in game stories.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a plan for
Not much coming out, but there's a whole lot coming out.
Yeah, exactly. I had this whole episode laid out. I did all the pre-production late last night for the show, and then we get up today, and a bunch of big stories hit. So the show's rundown has changed on the fly for this episode, but I think it's going to be better for it. So without further ado, let's get on with the show. The first topic we're going to discuss this week is undoubtedly the biggest, well, actually before today it would have been the biggest story.
Yeah, I think it's a bigger one.
There is a bigger one now that we'll get to later on in the show. But before that, the biggest story of the week was undoubtedly Star Wars Celebration, which happened this past weekend. They debuted one game because the other game was known about, but they showed kind of the first footage of it. But obviously the big story for our audience out of Star Wars Celebration is Star Wars Jedi from Respawn. We've been waiting a long time to see this game. A couple days before it was unveiled at Star Wars Celebration, or the day before, Vince had announced that it was a single-player only game with no microtransactions, so that made people happy right out of the gate. And then the next day, they showed the debut trailer. The response to this has not been overwhelmingly positive.
No.
And one thing I will say that we're starting
People were hoping for gameplay.
Yeah.
Which, not an unreasonable expectation 7 months from release.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure we'll see it at E3.
Yep. One new thing we are doing on GameFace is we are running weekly Twitter polls on our Twitter feed. And we're going to poll you guys on a topic, and then we're going to discuss the topic in the show, and then share what you guys thought about the topic at the end. So we did do a poll for this game this week, and we'll get to the results of that poll as we sort of wind up this topic. But one thing I would say about the no gameplay thing, and I feel like they did a pretty good job explaining this during the presentation, was that this isn't E3, this isn't Gamescom, this isn't GDC, where they would be more likely to show the gameplay. This is Star Wars Celebration, where maybe erroneously they assumed that most of the people that were watching were Star Wars fans and not necessarily video game fans, and therefore they thought, and maybe this is just an excuse.
If you're a video game fan and you're tuning into Star Wars Celebration, you're probably also a Star Wars fan.
Absolutely, yeah. But they basically said that that's why they decided to show a story trailer instead of a gameplay trailer. They did say that this was all done in-engine. These are the character models and the environments from the game.
Which is part of the problem because it doesn't look as, mind-blowing as your average CG trailer.
Right,
because
it's real time.
It's game assets. It's not real time. They specifically said it wasn't real time. They said it was
so they're saying
rendered in-engine with in-game assets. So you're probably still looking at like the PC version on Ultra here.
Yeah. Which means on Xbox One X it might look close to this.
Slightly, yeah. But you're probably still looking.
It'll be in the ballpark.
You're looking at an idealized version.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Basically you're looking at the version of this that you'll play on PlayStation 5.
Yeah, pretty much.
When it comes down to it, or some future beefy PC rig that you have.
Beefy.
Now, Matt, as a gigantic Star Wars fan, in fact, the biggest Star Wars fan that I know in my life, and I would say someone who knows more about Star Wars than anyone I have ever met, how do you feel about it?
Looks good. I mean, it looks like a better Star Wars story than the Star Wars story movies. Like, I'd rather they made this movie than Rogue One or Solo, that's for sure.
I would disagree with Rogue One. Solo, I'd agree with.
Here's the thing. Rogue One's only good because the last 30 minutes is giant Star Wars porn.
Yeah, it is.
If you take that away, I would say that Rogue One and Solo both have similar, we don't really know what the first two acts are supposed to be or who these characters are problems. It's just Rogue One ends
with a flourish.
You're just smashing Star Wars toys together.
Yeah.
And the end of Solo is people arguing in an office.
Yeah, I didn't make it through Solo. I fell asleep before I made it to the end of the movie.
Solo is the first Star Wars movie I have not bought on disc.
I could understand that.
Well, I didn't hate it. It was I thought it was boring.
It was boring.
I don't see the point of it and I cannot imagine ever wanting to watch it again.
Yeah, I couldn't stay
Which
awake.
I do think it's better than Attack of the Clones, but Attack of the Clones is part of the story.
Right.
And Solo is completely disposable.
Yeah.
And if you really did have any questions about how he got any of his stuff or his name or anything, I don't know why you would, because none of it's important. The answer is some guy gave it to him. Every single one of the things is like, how do you get his blaster? Some guy gave it to him. How do you get his name? Some guy gave it to him. How do you get that ship? Some guy gave it to him. Like, it's just
an easy plot device.
How do you get his belt buckle? Some guy gave it to him, and then he never got another belt buckle for the rest of his life. It's stupid.
Maybe we should summarize the plot of this first. We didn't do that.
So this one, Fallen Order, takes place, looks like a few years after Episode 3. Order 66 has been
Which is Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, Order 66 has been given.
You should tell me what Order 66.
Order 66 is the... really?
Yeah, you should. Not everyone's a huge Star Wars fan.
But if you've seen it, Order 66 is the order that Palpatine gives in Episode 3 for the stormtroopers to all turn... The clone troopers to all turn on their Jedi generals and massacre them and wipe out the Jedi Order. But it has been established in non-movie stuff that several Jedi survived other than just Yoda and Obi-Wan. This is basically the story of a Padawan named Cal, which for...
C-A-L, right?
C-A-L,
Yeah.
which for California natives just reminds us of Cal Worthington. And his dog Spot. Go YouTube. You search that on YouTube. Cal Worthington and his dog Spot. And he is a Padawan. He's a young Jedi trainee who somehow survives and goes underground, basically, and is working in like you see here. He's working in a salvage operation, which is cutting apart, mothballed Clone Wars starships. And looks like one of his friends has an accident, and to save his life, he uses the Force, and that gives him away. And an Inquisitor comes after him. As part of the Jedi Purge. And we have wall running because it is the Titanfall people. So it's basically you're going to end up on the run, and at some point, I guess, re-embrace your Jedi heritage as you get attacked by this Inquisitor who has been seen once before.
Where?
In a comic book, in a Darth Vader. I think it's Darth Vader.
I don't remember ever seeing in the films.
No, it wasn't in the films. Nothing's in the films. There's a comic book, Darth Vader, I think 19. You see her in the back of one panel, like in a group of Inquisitors, and she's standing there. And that was from a while ago, so they've been setting this up.
Wow.
For a while.
That's some forward thinking.
There's a plan here, like the Cylons, and also she kind of looks like a Cylon. So.
Yeah.
And there's a nice touch there where, they did point it out in the presentation where she's got her hand on the canopy and is like breaking through the Force, but she's also using the Force to mess with the stick of the ship and throwing them out of control. Like it looks cool. I mean, it looks cool. Like the idea of a Jedi on the run.
I don't see anything wrong with this story at all. Well, it seems like a lot of the feedback, people were not happy with it. They don't like the character. They don't like the setting.
The character's a little generic. It's just sort of like, okay, there's a kid. He looks a little bit like Anakin. I mean, I know he's played by the guy, I can't remember his name. He was on Shameless, and he was one of the characters who might be the Joker in Gotham. He's a good actor, but he looks a little too much like Anakin for me. Like, he looks a little like, he's a young white kid with a kind of bushy hair on top. I'm like, okay, it looks kind of like Anakin Part 2.
Yeah.
It would have been nice to be able to kind of create your character a little bit. Jedi Academy did that. They let you, you can design your character a little bit and just use the same voice. But if you're doing all this motion capture, performance capture stuff, you're kind of locked into whoever you've chosen the character to be.
Do you think Lucas maybe mandates that stuff?
Oh, it's all Lucas. Yeah, it's all Lucas.
That's what I figured.
Lucasfilm has
maybe they have a plan for this character for the future.
They might. I mean, I'm sure. I would guess they usually keep their stuff pretty separate, so I would guess that you would see Cal in future games. Like, they would be planning this as like a series, and you would see more games from probably Respawn or at the very least Stig moving forward. And maybe he might get. There's usually comic book spin-offs or whatever. You could maybe you could see if they were thinking real far ahead and the synergy was really in place. You got that new season of Clone Wars coming up. Maybe you'll see him like in training or something briefly. And someone will just be like, Cal, hold your lightsaber straight or something, or something like that. Like, that would be a fun little thing to do. Basically, look, I think was it Vince? Somebody described it as Force Unleashed without all the '90s extreme nonsense.
Which is what we're seeing right now, by the way. This
yeah.
is Force Unleashed that we're seeing now.
So, except and not quite as edgy, like he's. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of like dark side, light side temptation happening with Cal. He seems pretty solidly.
Seems like it's just a survival
light side,
story.
but he's just got to survive this onslaught. A little similar to what they did in Rebels with the Inquisitor chasing them.
Yep.
But I like the idea. I'm curious, they've already kind of gone into discussions about like, oh, once you're more leveled up, you can go back and do previous levels and like find new things or attack them differently or whatever. And I'm like, okay.
So are there RPG elements?
Maybe. I mean, I'm sure there's upgrades one way or the other. But it's like the way they're talking about it and already talking about like going back and replaying things. It makes me wonder how long this is.
Right.
It might be more of like a standard 8 to 10 hour single player thing. Which I don't know. Like I know people were kind of hoping for more of a third-person action RPG sort of thing.
I don't think that was ever in the cards.
I think you're looking more at a God of War game with lightsabers.
Yeah, I don't think that. I don't know if you'd want Respawn making a game like that right out of the gate anyway. Well, maybe it's something they build to as they keep making these games.
Yeah, I mean it's like you can't just start with Assassin's Creed Odyssey.
Yeah, I mean even Ubisoft didn't.
So it's but it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. They talked a little bit about how the combat is, but it was all like kind of buried under PR, PR perky speak.
Well, it was weird because the whole, and I think that's why a lot of people are put off by this game a little bit, is because it wasn't debuted the way video games are typically debuted. Mm-hmm. It was debuted at this pop culture conference where games are just kind of on the periphery and they're not the focus. And I think that came through in the presentation. The presentation was weird. You could tell a lot of the people who were on stage with Respawn didn't know a lot about video games.
Yeah. But like it's just, it's Star Wars Celebration more than anything else.
Yeah.
You can also see how, the host was kind of cringy.
Very cringy.
Just because it's so corporate, chirpy, like everything's awesome, everything's great. Oh, we can't wait to see that again.
All this stuff.
Yeah, and it's just like, I mean, we've seen that happen with, Star Wars live streams and everything like that. Like that's just how they roll.
Yeah.
Also, just sort of how, it is also how Disney rolls.
Yeah,
but
that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, but Lucasfilm's been doing that for much longer than they were bought by, any kind of like thing like that. There's a face and there's a tone and that's it. And everyone's kind of got that, but it just feels a little more artificial here for some reason, especially because like when you've just got Vince sitting there and be like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, he was very casual.
Vince doesn't play along really with that stuff.
Yeah.
And you could tell like, people there are more interested in Star Wars than games.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing was like, you still saw a lot of Star Wars fans like kind of, afterward being like, well, I mean, I'm interested. The story looks cool, but like, I want to know what I'm doing. I want to know how it's going to play and what it's going to feel like to play it. And you can have the guy who plays Cal up there talking about how, it felt heavy and powerful. And I'm like, but of course he's going to say that,
I think the sad truth really, though, is that we kind of already know how it's going to play.
I don't know about that. Like, it's, it's Stig. Like, he did good combat in the past. I'm sure he has some ideas about how a lightsaber should play. Frankly, if it was up to me, and it's too late for this now, but I'm just like, just take Sekiro's combat system and make a Star Wars game with it.
Yeah.
Because that game, that captures the whole kind of clash back and forth element.
And the make one mistake and
mistake, you die. Like, it really drives home the idea that these things you're fighting with are lethal objects.
Yeah.
It would be actually a pretty good starting point for a Star Wars game.
I highly doubt that's going to be
I don't think it's going to be as complex as that.
Yeah.
But I do feel like there's going to be a little more respect paid to because one of the things about it, I didn't like Force Unleashed at all.
Most people didn't. I mean, even I'm a Star
somebody
Wars fan
did because that's the only review I ever got death threats from.
Wow.
I gave it a 2
You're
out of.
lucky. You only got one.
I gave it a 2 out of 5, and people lost their minds.
Because it's Star Wars.
Because it's Star Wars.
You were absolutely on the money, though.
I don't think it's very good.
Nobody does.
Very good at all. And part of the problem is because the lightsaber is a Nerf bat.
Yeah.
There's no respect paid to how dangerous that thing is.
But if you see like the motion capture stuff that's in the other footage that we have for this game, like it looks like that's what they're doing though. I mean, they're fighting with Nerf swords. Like,
well, they don't have real lightsabers.
Yeah, obviously not. But I don't know. Watching this mocap, do I see anything that looks any different than any other sword-based game I've played?
Well, no, but these are just like probably cutscenes.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not doing this for gameplay necessarily. Like, I'm not too worried about that. I think it'll be decent.
Coming out November 15th, right? Is that what it was?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So not long to wait.
No, right in the middle of pre-Black Friday.
I mean, you figure E3, they'll probably show us a 10, 15-minute gameplay, something or other of it.
Maybe. I mean, they're not doing a press conference.
Right.
So maybe on the stream or maybe something playable or something on the floor. I don't know.
On what floor? On EA's personal floor,
Yeah,
miles away from the
they're doing
convention
that
center.
thing.
Yeah.
So I'm sure we'll see something. At the very least, even if they weren't planning on it, now they know they have to.
Yeah. From all the feedback.
I mean, when else are they gonna do it?
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting. It'll be easier to make a kind of a they already want your pre-order money. It's already on the on the console stores.
Yeah.
But this will be. I mean, look, I'm in. It's Star Wars.
I'm in too. I mean,
At the very least, just to support EA's, it's like yes, we want more frickin' Star Wars games that are single player and not microtransaction. That like make more of this. Like do more of this.
Yeah.
Because it's like what we talked about. We're like, if you want like a big games as a service hit, that's fine. But you also can supplement that with other things that are not all multi-billion-dollar games as a service 10-year plans. You can just make video games.
Are you as excited for this game now as you were before you saw it?
Sure. I mean, it's kind of exactly what I was expecting it to be in terms of narrative and set. Anyway, we kind of not hard to guess from the title like what they're after here.
What does Fallen Order mean, though?
The Jedi Order has fallen.
Yeah. Is it that simple, you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what order in Star Wars means the Jedi Order.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's something else, then I don't know what they're talking about.
Okay.
They might also be a duplicate of like Order 66 has fallen. It's sort of come down on things.
Right.
Or maybe the resistance against the Order 66 idea, the Fallen Order idea in the end could mean like, the Order 66 idea has fallen because he defeats the people trying to carry it out.
Right.
But generally, Jedi Fallen Order to me says you're in the Jedi Purge, you're in the Dark Times. Like, that's what this is.
For Star Wars fans, though, this could be a great vehicle for retribution and revenge, right? Because all the Jedi are wiped out, and now you have a chance to play the Jedi that's left that can get revenge for what happened.
Jedi don't take revenge.
Right.
Also,
but we do. We're not Jedi.
Also, you're kind of underestimating how much people don't like the Jedi.
Really?
The prequels kind of laid like the reason the fall happens is because the Jedi are idiots.
Yeah.
Like the Jedi are arrogant fools. The council falls because they won't listen, because they won't see what's in front of them.
Yeah.
Like that's the tragedy of that. It's hard to get to because they're so poorly written and so poorly made in a lot of ways. But the tragedy of it is that it was all in front of them for the whole time, and they couldn't see it because they were so up their own asses.
Right.
And really, I bet they don't go into this much, but really, because like now all of a sudden they're generals and they're fighting a war and they're doing these things that they said Jedi should never do, but they got so into it that they just never saw it happen. I mean, Yoda's sitting in the same office as Palpatine for all their strategy meetings, and he doesn't know he's the most powerful Sith in the universe, right?
Yeah.
So it's like because the dark side clouds everything.
Right,
and like,
right.
And they're letting him letting their star pupil Anakin go over there and hang out with this old dude who's like showing him all his weird statues and just like, hello, have you seen his decor? Clearly evil. No one has that much red and black in their house, and there's not something going on.
Yeah.
So yeah, like the story of the Jedi falling is sort of is a attempt to be a classic tragedy where hubris is what dooms them because that would never occur to them that could be happening right under their nose. And the humiliation and the humbling of the Jedi Order, and sort of the story of kind of recovering from that with these guys. You can tell he's lost his faith in this thing he was raised in, and maybe he's even started to realize that, like, yeah, maybe kidnapping babies and raising them in a religious order that trains them to kill people is not the most
Best
benevolent
idea.
thing in the world. Like there's a lot of issues there.
Yeah.
So it's how they play that will be interesting because the fandom has a lot of opinions on Jedi. And of course, everybody wants to be a Jedi, but part of the
because they're the good guys.
No, because they're cool. The fantasy is that you would be better than the Jedi. That you would not be as blind as even say Mace Windu, when he doesn't when he takes him forever to figure out what's right in front of him, and like. He's like, you don't trust Anakin Skywalker, but you're Palpatine. You're like, I don't know. And then like my favorite line in all of Episode 3 is when Anakin tells him that Palpatine's a Sith Lord, And he says, Anakin, okay, scurry along now and we'll take care of it. And he goes over and leans on the war table thing and goes, I sense a plot to destroy the Jedi. And I'm like, you think? What do you...
those films were not the best.
No. So I'm interested to see where they go with this. The Jedi Purge era is always interesting to me. The Between Trilogies, kind of segment. Rebels kind of explored some of that too, which is cool. As long as I don't see gameplay and it looks like some horrible, janky third-party terrible thing. I mean, I don't think we're going to get that from.
I don't either. I don't think that they would release it if that were the case.
No. God knows they're not averse to canceling Star Wars games. So.
That's true. That was interesting too because after this was announced, Amy Hennig was on a panel somewhere and they asked her about this. They're like, "Wait a minute. Didn't they cancel your Star Wars game?
Didn't they cancel your single-player narrative-driven cinematic Star Wars game?"
Yeah. And tell you this because they wanted games that were
single-player games are dead?
Yeah. And then they let Respawn make one?
Respawn was...
She was very classy about it. But that's got to hurt a little bit.
It's got to. And also, let's not forget the big difference between the Respawn one and hers. The Respawn one ain't using Frostbite.
Yeah. You're right.
Because the Respawn one started development well before Respawn was purchased by EA.
Did you see US Gamer Story this week about Frostbite?
No.
They did like a whole feature on Frostbite and how it's screwed over EA and all these studios.
Might be time to just suck it up and start paying for the Unreal support again, guys.
Definitely. Yeah, it's time.
Hello.
Yep. And then the other game they showed was Vader Immortal. This it's a VR game that was kind of leaked, announced a while ago. They put out like a little teaser for it, but they showed it finally in full at Star Wars Celebration. I was really excited for this at first because I thought it was like a first-person lightsaber fighting VR game. As it turns out, it's not. It's
just sort of a ride.
It's like a walking simulator.
Sort of. It reminds me of like ILM did the same team, ILM X something. I don't remember what it's.
ILMX.
ILMX, and then
it's in the trailer.
It's another three-letter abbreviation. But they did a similar kind of thing with it was like the Trials on Tatooine thing, where you just sort of stand there laying Falcon lands, you deflect some stuff and kill some stormtroopers, and then you fly away. It was almost like a tech demo. And
that seems like kind of what this is.
I think that's more or less what's happening.
You're in Vader's castle, and he's like holding you hostage or some crap.
Yeah, it's just going to be an experience.
Yeah. Kind of disappointing, but it looks really good.
Yeah.
And it's an Oculus exclusive, so you can only get it on Oculus HMDs. It's not coming to PlayStation VR. It's not coming to Vive. So Oculus cracked some kind of an exclusive deal with Lucas. How do you feel about that?
Meh.
I mean, you have all the HMDs, so it doesn't really matter to you.
I don't have an Oculus.
Oh, you don't? So you actually would not be able to play this.
Well, I mean, I do have the thing that lets me play Oculus stuff on the
the
Vive.
Right. I forgot about that. What's that thing called again?
I can't remember.
Yeah.
I haven't used it in 2 years.
So, excitement levels for this, I think, once you find out what kind of a game it is, it mutes it. But still, fun diversion, I think, for Star Wars fans.
At least they're making something.
Yeah. And then before we move on, I don't think it would be right to be sitting here with you on a podcast and not ask your opinion on the new Star Wars film, Rise of Skywalker.
I'm sure it'll be fine. I don't have a lot of faith in J.J. Abrams to finish something. He doesn't do conclusions. He does pilots, basically.
Yeah.
The only thing he's ever finished, like from an episodic point of view, is Felicity.
Did he stick around till the end of Lost?
He didn't even stick around for past the first episode of Lost. He worked
is that true?
He worked on the pilot, and that was it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he gets credit on everything because
Interesting.
That's how contracts
I had no
work.
idea.
Oh, he basically only worked on the development and pilot.
Wow, I didn't know that.
So all the blame he gets for like how that show ended poorly, like it wasn't him.
But he defended it. Like he was the one who came out and did all the shows and talked to all the fans and said this was my plan and blah blah blah. But that was all
nothing.
BS.
He doesn't make plans. Everyone knows that. He even said, like, he's like, I don't know who Rey's parents are.
Yeah.
Like, there's a bunch of different ideas we had, but we didn't commit to any of them.
Yeah.
And, of course, the thing is, like, I love The Last Jedi. I thought The Last Jedi was brilliant.
Yeah, I liked it, too.
And I have zero faith in J.J. to follow up on any of the themes or ideas that movie sets up, because his stuff is more like a bunch of mysteries and a bunch of reveals. And so my expectation is he's going to kind of reverse a bunch. Rey's parents are not nobody. They're going to be secret super Jedi who were hiding all this time, and now they're back, and it's there.
But you know what, though? I think fans would like that, because when they said that Rey's parents were just these paupers, like, people freaked out.
Well, yeah, because it was great.
Yeah.
It was
but the fans were like, no, they need to be like super Jedis.
No, the fans were not. The fans were not. A small group of people were, but even a lot of the people that hated The Last Jedi thought the idea that she was from nothing was a cool idea, because it gets you past the Skywalker obsession. It gets you past the magic family bloodline destined thing.
Right.
And it was funny, even the people I saw on Twitter and stuff who hated Last Jedi were like, well, I hated that movie, but at the very least I thought we'd move past the whole destined Skywalker family thing, and now they're back in the title, you know?
Yeah, so that is a little weird. What do you think that means?
Well, I think the theory is that it's like a title, that is what Rey is going to call the new Jedi Order, that she's going to call them Skywalkers. Is probably what that is, because I don't think you can redeem Kylo Ren, because you could redeem Vader. I mean, Vader's like super space Nazi, and he blew up a whole planet, and sure, but like we didn't know anyone on that planet, and like you can't do that with Kylo Ren, because on screen he murdered his own father, and that father was Han Solo, and you can't come back from that.
Yeah, that's really hard.
I think he might get like a last heroic sacrifice thing, but it also wouldn't surprise me, because at the end of The Last Jedi, he is committed to being the bad guy.
Yeah.
And
I mean, he went through that. He went through the moments where he was questioning.
I think he's got to come. I think he's got to be the big, committed big bad in this one, even though we hear Palpatine laughing and whatever. But
what do you think about that?
I mean, it doesn't surprise. That's the thing I'm talking about with J.J. Abrams. It doesn't surprise me that he would be going back to the Return of the Jedi well, where like you see the shot of like the wreckage of the Death Star, and then you hear Palpatine laugh, and it's like, okay, so we're just doing Return of the Jedi again.
Yeah.
Like we're going to canonize.
I mean, that to me is what he's done with Star Wars. Is he hasn't really created his own films. Right. He's like reimagined parts of the prior films.
Yeah, he just puts it together in a weird order. It's like, hey, remember that? It's like, you'll be fine. It'll be like the original trilogy. It'll be like, first one was good, second one's great, third one's fine.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge Return of the Jedi fan.
I'm not either. I liked it, but
although to be fair, the things I like about Return of the Jedi almost all involve the Emperor. So maybe bringing the Emperor back in is a good thing. You know, maybe
the more you talk about it, though, the more it is sounding like Return of the Jedi.
I will always watch Ian McDiarmid go nuts and chew scenery for as long as you allow me to. Yeah. So he's the only great thing in Episode 3. With that opera scene.
Yeah, it is amazing.
So, so it's not if you're going to bring anybody back, sure, bring him back. I'd rather see him than Hayden Christensen come back, that's for sure.
So he's going to be a Sith ghost.
Luke's
going to be a ghost Jedi.
How about this? The reason the wreckage from the Death Star is there because he used the dark side of the Force to use the wreckage to create an escape pod around himself to go back down to the planet and land there, and he's just lived there as sort of like a cocoon, like damaged. That is an actual thing that happened in SWTOR.
No, what I was about to say
that's how Darth Malgus survived.
I'm laughing at it, but I could actually very well
That's literally what happened in one of the SWTOR stories. Is somebody use a cocoon of wreckage to like go down to a planet and be a Force evil thing.
Okay.
So yeah, there's precedent.
Yeah.
and now that Game of Thrones is ending, the guys who'd made Game of Thrones, the showrunners for that, are going to do a trilogy in the Knights of the Old Republic era.
For TV or for film?
Film.
Really?
And Kathleen Kennedy today confirmed that Knights of the Old Republic is one of the things they're doing for like
wow.
We're getting a Knights of the Old Republic movie.
Wow, that's awesome.
I don't know if it's going to be the story that those games told, but it's going to be set in that era.
Interesting.
And you're getting the Game of Thrones guys to do it. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is cool. So overall, Star Wars Celebration, thumbs up?
More or less. I mean, if it really was thumbs up, I would have gone.
Right. That's a good point.
But although like some of my friends that went got stuck there for an extra day because it snowed on Sunday.
What?
It was 65 degrees on Saturday, and then it snowed on Sunday, and the airport shut down.
Wow.
So some people had their flights canceled. A couple people had to end up watching Game of Thrones in their hotel rooms instead of in the parties they were supposed to go back to. Chicago. You never know.
It's cold up there.
Yeah,
for sure.
And then next year it's going to be in Anaheim. They don't do a celebration every year, but they're doing another one next year in Anaheim for like. Originally I was like, for what? Because like there's no Star Wars movie next year. There's no Star Wars movie for like 3 years. But I guess it's for Empire Strikes Back's 40th anniversary.
Fair enough.
So yeah,
my opinion, best film in the franchise.
I can go with that.
Absolutely.
They did a 40th celebration for the first one, so they might as well do that for this one.
Yep.
And because the December Star Wars slot's getting taken by Avatar for the next 2 years.
But Matt, you're forgetting that next year there will be at least 5 Star Wars games from EA that they're going to have to show.
Did they say that?
No. being facetious. They're not going to have any Star Wars games.
I don't know what they're talking about now. It's like,
No, I was making it up.
Yeah, they're basically done. I mean, what else in the pipeline? Nothing.
I don't know. I mean, they should have something in the pipeline. The contract isn't up.
Well, they killed that Vancouver one,
Yeah.
which was the same one that they'd moved up from Hennig,
Yep.
and the same one that Jade Raymond was working on with Motive.
Yep.
And I mean, I guess Battlefront 3.
I mean, those studios have to. They're definitely going to make Battlefront 3, but those two other studios have to do something. They can't just sit there twiddling their thumbs.
I guess.
And pitch in on like Anthem whenever they need help. Like
I don't even know.
You built those two big studios. They have to make something.
I don't even know. I mean, kudos to them for still supporting Battlefront 2 even now. Like, there's still stuff being added to it, but like, I don't know anyone who's playing that game.
No, I don't play it.
Like,
I see all this stuff coming out for it, and I just don't care.
When I see an update, I load it up and look at the stuff, but I like play like one match and stop.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, that's pretty much.
Well, I saw Count Dooku. That's cool.
Yeah, even for you, that's
I'm done.
As far as you're gonna go. So there you go, the Star Wars celebration. I would say I'm a little less excited for Fallen Order now that I've actually seen it.
To really affect my excitement,
But my
level,
excitement was really high.
You're gonna have to show me the gameplay.
Yeah,
you have to show me the combat. Like that's because it's gonna live or die on that.
it will. It's going to be. It's going to be a hack and slash. So
Yeah.
Hacking and slashing better be good.
Yep.
Really good.
Especially in a year where Sekiro came out.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about a PlayStation VR game. Full disclosure before we discuss this game, I am friends with the people who are making it. So just want to put that out there for editorial reasons. It is being created by James Milkey, who is the Milkman from EGM fame.
EGM days.
And it's being created by him and a friend of mine, Sam Kennedy. Sam Kennedy, as he founded NeoGAF, he basically founded 1UP. He's been in both games journalists have been in the industry for over 20 years. They've made their first game, and it's called Jupiter and Mars. It's an interesting game. Right now, it's a PlayStation VR exclusive, although I think if it's successful, they'll eventually move it over to PC HMDs.
Oh, you didn't do the poll.
Oh, good point.
Dan Boy 90 called you on that.
Yeah, that's good. I'll be like a drum and bass DJ, and we'll rewind it. That's what the audience does at drum and bass gigs. So let's go to the poll. We asked you guys what you guys thought of Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, and here are the results. So the question was, what are your thoughts on the Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order reveal? And the options were Star Wars, I'm in, I need to see more. The plot killed it for me. The vast majority of you guys are at least digging the game a little bit. So 92% of you said you're at least a little bit intrigued by the game. 8% basically said that what they saw of the plot and what they saw of the story trailer basically just killed it for them. Mm-hmm. I would say that the response to the game on Sifted proper, as far as the comments underneath the trailer, were far more negative than this poll would indicate. A lot of people, it seemed like they were not that into it, but the poll seems to tell a different tale. So if you're Respawn and you see this poll, how are you feeling about it?
Well, I mean, you got like, what, 92% of people are at least interested.
Yeah.
So that's good.
That's good.
I mean, I voted for need to see more.
Yeah, I would have too. Yeah, I probably would have voted for that as well, particularly now that the other parts of it didn't capture me as much as I had hoped that they would.
It's also like, it's not like I haven't passed on Star Wars games in the past, but it's also like I also miss the times when Star Wars games were so plentiful that I felt like I could skip some.
Right.
Because I'm like, oh, that doesn't look good enough for me to bother with. I'm not going to play Super Bombad Racing. But now it's like, well,
I forgot about that game.
Now it is Star Wars. I don't know, like you're so starved for it now.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, I have faith in Stig.
Yep. So overall, you guys seem to be at least a little bit into it, though. I would have thought the number for It's Star Wars I'm in would be higher.
I wouldn't.
Really?
Not from game people. From like my friends who love Star Wars, yeah, but like from people who like play you still gotta play it. You gotta see the gameplay. You always gotta see the gameplay.
I mean, most Star Wars games, no matter how good or bad they are, sell.
Well, we don't know that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while. I don't know. I mean, Battlefront sold really well.
Yeah, but Battlefront was good. Battlefront was pretty solid. I mean, it was also very straightforward.
Force Awakens sold really well.
Force Awakens?
Yeah. Force Unleashed. Sorry.
Well, yeah, but Force Unleashed was 11 years ago.
Yeah.
It's a totally different way. We don't know what a Star Wars single-player action game will do in a modern game market. Like, everything's changed too much. Like, there's no prediction for this. I mean, I'm guessing probably 10 million will sell if it's any good.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yep.
I mean, if Battlefront 1 can sell 15 million, this could get up there too if it's solid, but we'll see. Like, part of the reason Battlefront...
If it's really the length that you had hypothesized it might be, that could be a huge, huge problem.
Well, it depends. I mean, ideally you'd make it more like a God of War length.
Yeah.
You know, but we'll see what they do.
And it is Stig, so I'm hoping for at least 15 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, the old God of Wars were 12 to 20.
I mean, Stig and also Vince, the Respawn, they're savvy about what all this is.
They get it.
You know, and they've been working on it for years. I mean, it's not like it's not like it's an emergency thing they just pulled the lever on when Battlefront 2 went bad. Yeah. And Battlefront 2 still sold like 8 million copies. Yeah. It just didn't sell EA copies, you know. It's like
because the first one sold what, 12, 13?
Up to 15 by the end of it, I think.
When it was all said and done.
And now you can get it for like $5.
Yeah.
It's like, so they're still probably selling a little bit, a little trickle. It'll be fine. I mean, will it be a runaway hit? I don't know. One of the reasons Battlefront sold 15 million is because it was like, it's Star Wars. Star Wars is back. You know, 2015, The Force Awakens was like, you know, nothing else. Like it was probably the you know, between that until Avengers Endgame, which is by far the most anticipated film of all time. Force Unleashed and Episode 1 were the two to beat in that regard, and it was because they'd been gone for so long. And here was Force Awakens coming back and saying, "Hey, it's okay to like Star Wars again, and here's a game where all the things you recognize are in it." You know, it poked that nostalgia button so hard, and it's like. Jedi Fallen Order doesn't necessarily have that because it's an original story set in an era where the movies have never really gone.
Right.
And you know, even without the kind of the 90s extreme of Force Unleashed, it might seem a little grimdark to people. But we'll see.
I gotta say, the subtitles for Star Wars stuff, it's all starting to blend together for me. Like, I have problems remembering, like, Fallen Jedi, Force, whatever. Mm-hmm. It's like there's certain words that have been used in subtitles so many times that they're all starting to just blend.
I'll give them a pass until they do Star Wars Revelations.
Yeah,
that's the most and Origins. Those are the two most annoying subtitles.
Yeah, if you look on Sifted, go to the search engine and just type in Revelations, and see all the games that come up. It's pretty freaking hilarious.
There's a lot of revelations.
Oh yeah,
on and on. And at this point, it's sort of like, could you just keep it to yourselves?
Yeah, seriously. So anyway, we're going to start doing these polls every week, and we're going to talk about them on GameFace. So if you're not following us on Twitter, please do that at Sifted Games, and make sure you can take part, because Matt and I are going to discuss them every single week. All right, let's get back to Jupiter and Mars. So like I said, this game is being created by former game journalists James Milkey and Sam Kennedy, and it is a VR game. It is not only playable in VR, though. It is you can play it both in 2D and in VR. And basically, it's a game about two dolphins, and they're named Jupiter and Mars. You control both dolphins at the same time. You only control the movement of one, and the other one you can see just kind of swims along with you. And the dolphin that you're controlling has basically two functionalities. So he can send out echolocation, which is what you're seeing right now. And it is... One thing I would say about this game that does bother me a little bit is that you have to use echolocation constantly. And you'll see in the footage, you're just constantly tapping the button because it's a lot of stuff blends in with the background or looks like it's not important. And when you use that echolocation, not only will it highlight the architecture of the ocean floor, but it also will highlight objects of interest that you need to interact with. So you're just constantly hitting that echolocation button. The other thing that the dolphin that you're controlling can do is he can send out sort of this sound blast that it won't kill enemies, because I don't think you can kill anything in this game. Yeah. It sends them scattering. So there are certain parts in the game where pathways are blocked by sea creatures, and you need to use that to get the sea creatures to disperse. Now the other dolphin, the one that swims along with you, he is the action character. So you can basically put your cursor on any object and have him basically sprint at it and then attack it with his nose. And he uses that. Sometimes there's gates underwater you need to bust through to get through. You need to use it to open up like conch shells and clam shells and get objects inside them. There are rocks that you can attack. and bust those up, and there's stuff inside those as well. And it's basically just collectibles that you get throughout the game. The object of the game itself is, at least I've not finished the game yet, but it's basically just progression. You're just progressing from one level to the next.
Are you attempting to get to the moon?
I don't believe so, no. I think that's just their names. Okay. I don't think it has any relevance to at least I don't know, unless there's some crazy sci-fi twist at the end.
I don't know, but as soon as a dolphin's in a video game, I assume we're going to get crazy by the end of it.
Yeah. But
Echo has a legacy.
It does. And a lot of people have compared this to Echo the Dolphin. I don't really see it, to be perfectly honest with you.
I mean, it's the obvious parallel,
it's a dolphin.
But it doesn't seem
It's a dolphin video game.
Yeah, it doesn't seem very much like Echo.
Yeah, the tenets of Echo are really nowhere to be found here. It's really a game...
I mean, Echo's an exploration puzzle swim former.
There's a little bit of platforming stuff in it. There's none of that really in this, though. Like, you can't even jump out of the water, which I thought was really weird. I mean, isn't that, like, the most fun thing that dolphins do, is, like, jump up out of the water? I thought it was a little strange that you couldn't do that. But the one thing about this game is it has an eco angle to it. So they don't beat you over the head with it, but there are lots of sort of call-outs to saving wildlife in our oceans. So one of the very first mission objectives you get is, hey, here's a mama turtle. She's looking for her baby turtles. Her baby turtles are wrapped up in plastic. You need to get the plastic off the baby turtles and return them to their mother. So a lot of the stuff in the game has that angle to it. Like, there's a lot of trash in the water in the game, and it makes a pretty strong point. I think it's maybe overdone a little bit. I don't know if there's too many parts of the ocean where there's just thousands of plastic bottles in the way when you're trying to swim through it. But it does make a...
Oh, there is.
Yeah, I mean, there's those big islands where it all congregates.
Maybe not under the water in the caves, because it does float.
Yeah, but in the caves in this, you'll swim through like 80 plastic water bottles. And so it is a game with a message, which is pretty rare, even in this day and age.
Just stop throwing bottles in the ocean, assholes.
It's that, or it's like, lower your consumption of plastic or whatever. It does kind of show you the direct... correlation between how we're acting as far as our recycling habits and how that impacts the wildlife that we can't see because they're under the water. And it's not like mean-spirited. It doesn't try to make you feel guilty or anything like that when you're playing it. It's just like, hey, look at what's happening here. This is something maybe you and all of us should pay attention to. There's really not danger in the game. I've never died. Maybe eventually you get to a point where you fight a boss or something like that, but that's really not happened for me so far. It's really just kind of adventuring around, finding the different little pathways. There's lots of little... It's like the level design's a little bit like Metroid, in that there's like lots of little hidden paths that you need to find collectibles and things like that, or just to find your way forward. And as you go, the dolphins level up. And basically what that means is they can dive deeper. When you first start out, you can only go like 30 or 40 feet down before the dolphin's like, no, I can't go any farther. And as you play the game, their abilities start to improve and get better, and then it gets you access to new areas. There's some areas where the current is going the wrong direction, and you're not yet strong enough to swim against it and get to that new area. But as you play, obviously, their swimming improves, and then you can reach those other areas. So, again, I just wanted to mention this game. My buddies have been working on it, and I want to take a couple minutes to bring it up for those of you out there with PlayStation VR. And again, you can play this on a base PS4 without VR if you want to. I would not fall for the Echo comparisons. If you're a big fan of that franchise, I would not immediately assume that you're going to like this game because it does play completely differently. I think
reminds me of Rez, almost.
Yeah, it's a little bit more like Rez, or just kind of like a walking simulator, really. I mean, it's just... You just poke around in the ocean and you stumble across objectives that you need to accomplish, and then you try to find where you need to go to do that.
Why do so many VR games seem to like lean so hard on the drug-related experience? Like it all feels so trippy.
What, this game in particular? Yeah. I mean, well, I'll say this. Like, James and Sam are both really into electronic music. Like,
I thought you were going somewhere else with that.
No. Or really, they really love
just
drugs.
On drugs all the time.
No, they're both really into electronic music and festivals. Milky's been a house DJ as long as I have. In fact, that's one of the things that we are very first connected on back in the day when I first met him, was that we both love house music and we were both DJs. And so when you're a part of that scene, I think that kind of colors everything you do a little bit as far as what you find appealing. And so if you think about a lot of the light shows and the laser shows that happen and that kind of stuff, I think it influences your art a little bit, and I think that might be one reason. I think another reason is it just helps with the layout of the ocean floor and plucking stuff out of the environments, because it does get pretty crowded. Like a lot of this stuff, like a lot of the areas have a lot of detail in them, and it can be hard to notice things that you need to notice to actually make progress through the game. And I think maybe the art style that they chose for this, it wasn't necessarily to make it psychedelic. It was more for a functional reason than anything else. This comes out April 22nd. Again, PlayStation VR exclusive. It does sell for $25. It is not a especially cheap budget title. It's obviously not 50 or 60 bucks, but it's still...
You're kind of edging into that not quite an impulse buy range.
Yeah, and so it is kind of on that edge there a little bit. But I've had a lot of fun with it. It's not an action game. It's not something that's going to get your pulse racing. It's a great thing to play after you come back from a long day of work and you just want to kick back and relax for a little bit. And that's what I've been using it for since I got the review.
It looks like the Dolphin's literally going into a rave right now.
Yeah. It does get kind of trippy and psychedelic without a doubt. And again, I think a lot of this has to do with things that Sam and James are really into. So there you go. Again, I'm not saying they like drugs. I'm not saying that they like drugs. I don't know if they like drugs, to be honest with you. Maybe they do. So maybe I shouldn't say that they don't like drugs. But I don't think that that's what influenced this. And with that, we're just going to stop. But anyway, Jupiter and Mars, PlayStation VR exclusive, April 22nd, $25. I'm enjoying it. And let's move on. We're going to talk next about the Xbox. It's been a big week for Xbox. We're warming up for E3 here, Matt. We're only a couple months away. I still am getting those emails every day from E3 telling me to register as press. I've never seen this before from E3. Usually you get one email. And then I'll have to, when I've...
It's like, yeah, you can do it now.
Right, and when I decide to register, I have to go back into my inbox and dig it up. I have got an email every day for 2 weeks straight asking me to register as press for E3. It's very weird. It total change in policy or structure and how they're doing things. I don't know why. Maybe they're scared because so many people have left that people aren't going to show up. I don't know.
I don't know. I certainly a lot of people in the press the last couple of years have not enjoyed their time.
Yeah, it's true. But they've been hawking me to register, and I'm like, man, I usually do this like literally.
Do they charge money for it now?
No.
No?
They never charge money to register.
Yeah,
it's
but now it's press. But
yeah.
Maybe they changed it. I was like,
oh, they're going to charge for people to get in, absolutely.
Well, yeah, for like general public. But
right.
At a certain point, you're like, when do we all start having to pay?
Right. You know? It's possible. Who knows? I mean, making the press pay would be a really bad idea, but it's possible. Who knows?
Keep the YouTubers out.
I mean, the way that E3 is going right now, like, anything's possible in all honesty. I wouldn't pull anything off the table of what could happen. But
I don't even know what it's going to look like. You see that they have not announced a booth space for Microsoft yet?
No. Well, I mean, last year they just had their Mixer booth. That's
right, but like now they don't even, there's not even
that
there yet. So will Microsoft be on the floor at all? Nobody knows.
That's weird because it appears that Microsoft is warming up for a colossally big E3.
Well, yeah, but that's at LA Live.
Yeah, right across the street. That's true. Yeah. You would think, though, if you're going to unveil a new console, which it sure sounds like they're gonna, you would want to have some kind of a floor presence so that people on the floor are like, hey, there's the new Xbox. Or maybe they're counting on third parties to do it. I don't know. It'll be weird. But
or they know that it's news one way or the other, and it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. I mean, they're going to have the press conference that everyone's going to watch.
I mean, Sony's not even showing up this year.
Right.
And they're already talking about the PS5.
Open. They are, yeah. And we'll get to that in a minute. But first, we're going to talk about Xbox. So some big news about Xbox came out this week. A bunch of big news. So we've been talking about the disc-free Xbox One S for quite a while on the show. But that was basically officially confirmed this week. And the details that have come out about it, again, most of this information broke from Windows Central. We want to make sure that we call out the publications who are doing the digging. The disc-free Xbox One S is going to be unveiled next week. It's going to launch on May 7th. It's going to come with a 1 terabyte hard drive, and it's going to come with 3 games bundled with it, which I think is pretty crazy. Forza Horizon 3, Minecraft, and Sea of Thieves.
Please play Sea of Thieves.
And exactly. And they are still saying that... oh, I just lost my train of thought with your joke.
That's what I'm here for. Is it actually the Xbox One S all digital? Is that the official name? Or people are calling it the Xbox SAD?
It's called No, there's some phrase for it. I should have written it down and I didn't. But it's
Because
called
being
like
called the Xbox SAD
really
online. Yeah,
because it's
S all digital.
Yeah,
So-
that's not what it is. I don't
Okay,
think
'cause
they have another name for
Because
it.
I was gonna say if they actually did that after like being shocked that people called it the X-Bone.
Right.
Because they had when people started calling it that when they unveiled it, like they're like we had no idea.
They were
Like,
mortified.
They were horrified that anyone would come up with that. I'm like, dude, why didn't you call me?
Yeah, I would've told you right away.
The first thing I would have said, yeah. Oh, so it's the bone.
Yeah. So
They should have doubled down on that. They should have embraced
sometimes
that.
that's the best way to do it, honestly. So coming pretty soon, in like I mean they're going to launch it in like 3 weeks, and we're going to learn about it next week. And they're saying at the same time the price, despite all this, the price is still going to be lower than Xbox One S. So 1 terabyte hard drive, 3 free games. Obviously,
that is the name.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, all digital. The S all digital. So it's the Xbox SAD.
That's unfortunate. That's not a good idea, but better than X-Bone, I think.
Maybe. I mean, now it's the X-Bone SAD.
It's not getting better.
No. Better pick that next name carefully.
Do you think there's going to be a market for this?
Maybe. Probably.
Yeah?
I mean, they know there's a market or not, I guess.
Yeah. I
No,
mean, they
I
thought
don't-
there was a market for like their crazy DRM policies.
I mean,
too,
I don't want one, but like, you know, it's clearly like a test. You know, sticking your foot in the all digital pool.
Yeah.
See if people will buy it. It's better to do it with this than to do it with the new system.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And blow it again.
Yeah.
So, like, I see what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's not a bad, you know, basically they're testing it out.
What price do you think?
Oh, I mean, $250, I would think.
I think it's less. I think it's $199.
I thought it was already announced $250.
Oh, I didn't see any pricing on it. I did a bunch of research and nobody was listing a price. They just said it's going to be cheaper than
I saw
Xbox One
$250
S.
several places today.
That's too high.
I think it's $250. Yeah, I would also say it's too high.
Yeah. If it's $199, I think they might find an audience for it. If it's more than that, I think it's just dead in the water.
Yeah, it's $250 is a lot for that.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to spend that, you might as well just plunk down the extra $100 and get the X.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Or wait.
Right. Or just wait for the next one, which from the sounds of it is coming like next year anyway.
Yeah, or just hang on for the 5.
Right.
You know, it is, I mean, I admit I don't fully know who's buying this, but at the very least, I understand why they want to put something all digital out and see, you
Test the
know,
waters.
run it up the flagpole, basically.
They're going to be the guinea pig for a lot of people. Because, you know, Sony's going to watch it. Although Sony, they have its plans already.
It's the canary in the coal mine, which maybe that's why it's the SAD, because that canary might die.
And then one of the other big announcements that broke this week, Microsoft is going to bundle together Xbox Live Gold and Game Pass for $15 a month, which is a $5 break on if you had paid for those two
both
things
of them.
separately. And if you extrapolate that money out across an entire year, it's even kind of a little bit of a better deal. So it's a legit bundle, like one that you save on. What do you think about that? Would that convince you to get Xbox Game Pass?
Maybe. I mean,
We already all have Xbox Live. Would you be willing to chunk down a little more change to get Xbox Game Pass?
maybe. I mean, it's probably like better than paying for all those games, I guess.
This is supposed to launch also on the same day that the disc-free
That's the sad.
Xbox One S is a sad. Yeah, so bad. I don't think that it's going to convince people to jump. It won't convince me to jump on Game Pass because the way I view Game Pass is it's not something that I would ever subscribe to for like a year. Like I would never just give Microsoft $120 and say I want this for a whole year. Game Pass to me, its proposition is I can jump in and spend $10 this month and play that one $60 game that I want to play. And then I can play it for that month, and I can jump out if I want to, or I can stay if I want to keep playing it. I don't think that it's like one of these things that people want to commit to long term unless they're total noobs and their entire library would be dependent on Game Pass. Then it's an amazing deal.
Do they take games away at all?
Over
Like,
time,
do
they haven't
do games like
on
rotate
Game Pass.
out? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Some games, like third-party stuff does. Because they sign deals for that for X amount of time,
Right.
and once it's up, it's up.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's not really a thing I'm all that interested in, like just because I prefer to like own it. But it's it's a good deal, I would say. If you burn through games faster than I tend to do, or don't go back to them later as often as I do, like a year or two later, like it probably is a pretty rational and cost benefit analysis thing. But I don't know. Like it's a good deal, but I don't know if I'd be willing to like kind of jump in on that, like you said, for like a whole year commitment.
Yeah,
that's a lot. For
it sounds like you're
it's a lot for a thing that I don't know if I would regularly use.
I mean, it is set up so that you can pay. You can do it either way. You can pay monthly, or you can pay for the whole year and get a little cheaper. So it's not like they're pigeonholing you into one or the other. But obviously, if you do pay for the whole year, you get the better deal.
Right.
And I could see, like, if you're new to gaming and you're like, I have no software library for Xbox One at all, I could see where Game Pass is amazing. It's like I haven't played hardly any of these games. So it's a little weird that it's like a dichotomy of they're going after the casuals with this, but it's also the most forward-thinking business model.
Yeah, it's the closest I think anyone's gotten to that Netflix for games idea. At least until and unless Stadia pops up with whatever they're going to do in that regard. I mean, it's an aggressive move. Like it's probably what they need to do right now. Because I feel like they want you to have Xbox Game Pass more than Live at this point.
It's more per month.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot. It's double.
So, yeah. Cool. I don't know.
I mean, look, I'm not hating on it. More options are always good. And they're not taking away the original option, which is most important. But do I see this kind of generating or invigorating the Xbox business? No,
but I feel like a lot of this is just positioning your pieces.
Yeah.
In preparation for the next generation.
Yep.
Like, for the next big move. So like I can kind of see what they're doing. They're kind of like getting it's almost like, do you really need to test this? Just by mushing these two services together, but you got to kind of get the user base kind of accustomed to the idea that these are two of the same thing, or two sides of the same coin, maybe, moving into the new system, so it kind of all feels like part of like a coherent and consistent like infrastructure.
Yeah.
So I see what they're doing. I don't know if I'll jump in on it unless like maybe you get to the next Xbox and like what Game Pass does evolves into something a little more radical, but we'll see.
Yep. And then the final piece of Xbox news from this week. Today, Microsoft announced when its E3 press conference is happening. It is going to be on Sunday, June 9th, the Sunday before E3, like it pretty much always is. It'll give them a good chance to get a jump on the rest of the show. It's going to have everything it wants. Every third-party game is theirs for the taking. It is going to be, I mean, it could be like one of the best press conferences in the history of E3 because it doesn't have to compete with anyone else for content.
With Sony, unless you want to be premiered on the Switch, I guess.
Right.
I don't know how many people,
Indie games, more
Indie
likely.
games, yeah, but it's like, in terms of like big things sharing the spotlight, there's not a lot of AAA going to happen there, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, Microsoft pretty much has their pick of the litter on this one.
So it could be
which has pretty much never happened before.
It hasn't. I think Bethesda's happening on Sunday again as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that should be a pretty big day in games. Yeah, I mean, Microsoft is primed to have its best E3 ever, or it should be.
The other big thing from today's announcements, which maybe only I care about, is they announced some new backwards compatibility stuff, and Ninja Gaiden 2 is finally backwards compatible, which the 360 version of Ninja Gaiden 2 is superior to the Sigma one. So it's nice that we can finally play that again on the modern console, which is great. We got that. Splinter Cell Double Agent, Conviction, and Blacklist are getting Xbox One X updates. They were already backwards compatible, but they're getting Xbox One X updates, and so are Fable 2 and 3.
Which is odd. So we were hanging out waiting for the show to start.
Yeah.
And Matt noticed that on his Xbox, Fable 3 had an update. And we were like, what is going on?
So
why would it ever update Fable 3?
Like, what could possibly be an 800 megabyte update for Fable 3? And that was what it was.
And then literally like 10 minutes later, we see the headline that it's...
So if you have Ninja Gaiden 2 on disc, you can put the disc in right now and play it.
And it'll work.
So.
Yep. So,
I dig that. I've been happy with the backwards compatibility stuff on on the bone.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's killing it.
Bone.
It's absolutely killing it with that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's been interesting watching Microsoft. I don't know if any company has changed as much this gen as Microsoft has.
Yeah, well, they had to. It was kind of a change or die situation, it felt like to me.
Yeah, I guess you're right. But if you think about it...
Sony was so dominant that whole time, and then the Switch came out and just burned everything up already, all over again.
Yeah.
And, the Xbox just sort of sitting there, like...
But it's completely...
The also-ran of also-rans, but now, like, that's
completely evolved as
business.
That's
why I always say, Microsoft is at its most interesting when they got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
Like, now they're just going for broke, doing all this crazy stuff, like with the Game Pass... And all the
first console without like a physical media.
Yeah, so it's
well, I guess the PSP Go was the first one. It's not a console, but
but still, it didn't have a fun acronym.
Yeah, exactly. So Microsoft,
it wasn't the PlayStation Portable Depressed or anything like that. But the SAD is your big console push into that move. It's gonna be interesting to see if it's embraced at all, really.
It might just be this thing that like you see on store shelves the first week it comes out, and then like you never see it again.
Yeah, I don't know.
You think it might be something worth buying for collectors?
I wouldn't go that far.
Yeah, they'll make so many of them that.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a forced scarcity McDonald's Szechuan sauce kind of thing. But it's going to be an interesting thing to watch. I don't have any interest in participating.
Right.
But
you let everybody else do it.
I mean, it could be seen as fairly pioneering if the all digital thing takes off. But obviously, that's not the full plan. Moving into at the very least, we got confirmation today that the PlayStation is not going all digital. So
yeah, we did.
You can still buy discs for the foreseeable future. Although maybe
GameStop was like...
Well, that's what I was going to say. Also, I was going to say, it's like, people are already talking about, you're going to trade your PlayStation 4 in to buy a PlayStation 5. And I'm like, maybe if GameStop's still around in 2020,
you could always sell it somewhere else.
Sure, but like the old trade-in deals tended to be GameStop stuff.
Yeah, who knows where they'll be in 2 years.
Year and a half.
If they're even anywhere. Who knows?
Yeah, a year and a half is a long time for a company that just lost $700 million.
Yeah, it's a long time to hold on. So we'll see. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about a game or a franchise that has had a cult following, I would say, for the last 10 plus years. Has it been around for 10 years?
More than that, I think.
More than that, I guess.
It goes back to the PS2.
That's true. Yeah.
Or no, the PS1. Wasn't there a PS1?
I don't think so.
The first one was PS1, I thought.
Was it?
I
did not know that. We're talking about...
It took a long time for them to start coming here.
Yeah.
That was the thing. But they started on the Simple series, which I think was PS2.
We're talking about Earth Defense Force. It's been this franchise that we've all just kind of laughed at for a long time.
Maybe you did. I always liked them.
Really? I mean,
not like in the sense of like, oh, those are actually really good. No, they're fun. They're
mindlessly fun.
Yeah, it's like the they started on the PS2.
I didn't think there was a PS1 game.
First release was 2003, so it's a 16-year-old series.
Wow, that's crazy.
I mean, it's from a tradition of like when in Japan it's called kusoge, which basically means it's a portmanteau of shit game, which means like games that are bad but you still have fun playing them. And I would argue that some of these are not bad; they're just repetitive and sort of unimaginative to a certain degree. But like, especially as someone who grew up with Godzilla movies and kind of kaiju stuff, or even if you're younger than me and you grew up with like Power Rangers and that kind of thing. Like the idea of fighting these giant monsters and alien things is just cool.
Oh, it's intrinsically cool.
And it just goes, the fact that they just go full bore with it and don't apologize for it makes it a lot of fun, even if it is maybe not on the Game of the Year short list or anything.
Well, I think another problem the franchise has had is that the developers that have worked on it have just been abysmal. They look terrible. They sound terrible, typically.
Sandlot is not your A-list, really.
No.
Although they did make Robot Alchemic Drive, which is one of my favorite PS2 games. And you can see they sort of have a wheelhouse with these giant things in cities. Yeah. I really wish we'd gotten another one of those at some point rather than 15 more of these. But you take what you can get.
Yeah.
This one, Iron Rain, is the first one that they've really tried to target for Western audiences.
It's developed by Ukes.
It's developed by Ukes.
Usually handles the WWE franchises.
Yeah, well, not for a long time, but the Ukes made the really good N64 WWF games.
Yep. No Mercy and
No Mercy and WrestleMania 2000 and all that. Or WCW No Mercy was they weren't the same company then.
That's right. That's before all the.
That's when wrestling wasn't a monopoly.
It was all before the mergers and acquisitions. Yeah.
So this is, I mean, they kind of tried to paint it as like a revolution in the series. What this really is it's just Earth Defense Force with a much more realistic texture set.
It looks a lot better than the old EDF games.
Yeah, and it's purely just the art style.
Yeah,
like it's all the same
shaders.
Yeah, it's all the same bouncing around, and the gameplay is very similar. Although the default, I thought it was funny, the default camera angle is sort of like a Gears of War over the shoulder thing, which is like, okay, so that's what you think appeals to like Western audiences. Like, that's what we like. Is
12 years ago,
like a camera over somebody's shoulder. But it's Earth Defense Force. It's still the same thing. And
I only played like just enough of this to capture this footage, so
I played like 15, 16 missions, I think.
And it seemed like the big monsters were more prevalent than they were in prior games. 'Cause they were kind of like bosses in the prior games. Here, they're just the enemies that you fight from the get-go.
That's pretty common. The thing about say 2017, Earth Defense Force 2017, or like 4.1 or whatever you're talking about, like you're talking about games with 90 to 100 something missions.
Right.
Like, so yeah, like early on, like you'd fight one of the big Ravager like robot things, and it'd be like, oh, he's the big fight for this mission. Like 10 missions later, they're the cannon fodder enemy. There's after a while, you don't even start to see the ants all the time, or like the ants are like not even a question. Especially because also the way these games work is you're constantly upgrading your character's like arsenal.
Yeah.
Like there's always like new things to find, and like you're collecting crystals to like which are used as 3 different kinds of currency, which really feel like they should be microtransaction, like real money currency, but instead they're not. Like it's like it feels like they kind of like
they were realistic.
Like, but it's also
like no one's gonna pay for this crap.
But it's also funny in the sense it's like if you were gonna look at Western games and what we play and how they work, you would see like, oh, there's all these different currencies they use to buy upgrades and stuff. But we don't want to do microtransactions, but we're still gonna use all the weird different currencies.
Right.
To like, because that must be what's popular. It's like it's weirdly like it's almost charming. In how like it's like, oh, we're just gonna,
how adorable, you're trying to act like us.
We're just gonna mimic like this horrible practice, but we don't understand why anyone would want that, so we're gonna just make it all self-contained.
Yeah.
But it's still the economy is like you don't need it to be different crystals, but like it's there. It's fun. And the funny thing is that they continually, it's still made in Japan, and the translation's still a little wonky. So you still end up with like dialogue that is charmingly ridiculous. My favorite of all time is from Earth Defense Force 2017, where there was an underground mission, and as you ran in, one of the other soldiers with you goes, "We're on an exciting underground expedition." And I'm like, what? Yeah, okay. I had to stop for that one and laugh a little bit on that. But this one, like, they're trying to do like this kind of like international, like multicultural team that's all together and like trying to defeat these monsters. And
the plot is not.
The plot is more involved than usual. I will give it that. But
there aren't many. I mean, from what I played, there weren't many cutscenes.
There's no cutscenes, but there's a lot of radio chatter.
Yeah.
That's always has been. And like you've got like the black sidekick who like, he's like the guy who just wants to party, and he's always listening to music on the troop carrier. Like it's like they watched every '90s era Will Smith action movie and just sort of like distilled it into one character. There's like the cold but like business-like Russian woman who's clearly like Brigitte Nielsen from Rocky IV. Like they're dealing with like all these tropes and sort of mashing them together into one squad. There's a couple of weird moments just like that you wouldn't get out of a Western game, like where this one giant thing appears and they say that you can't see it because it's so big, it's like stepping over buildings, and the one guy's like says like we've got it on satellite feed. This thing's bigger than one of the girls in your squad is Maeve. This thing's bigger than Maeve's behind.
Oh,
and
boy.
she says, "Cut it out, Ken. I am slender." And I'm like, what the? Okay, first off, no one would compare anything to a girl's ass in a modern Western video game.
Oh,
because we don't do that anymore.
Nope.
And second, I am slender.
Yeah.
Like, no one talks like that. There's constant lines in this game where, like, no one who speaks English talks like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's Japanese video games for the most part.
The other weird thing about this, at least in terms of, like, the Earth Defense Force stuff I've played, I'm not super well versed on the recent entries because they're like Dynasty Warriors games to me, and it's like I can only play them once every 6 years or so.
Yeah,
So
you're like, oh, I got it. I got my fix.
But like, there's a human rebel faction in this that is like broke off from like after a rebellion, and so occasionally you're fighting humans in like mechs, and that's not what I'm here for.
Yeah.
Like when they show up and like I find the game kind of tanks for me a little bit because I'm here to fight crazy alien monster things and not like dudes and scout walkers.
You gotta love that destruction too.
Destruction looks better.
Except it all looks like it's made out of paper mache.
Yeah, but it still looks better than any of the others they've done. Like
everything happens in slow motion.
Of course, because it's a kaiju movie. Like they're dealing with the conventions of what they're what they're taking from, and I think that still works. And there's the different mech suits you can use. There's a standard soldier. There's the wing suit where you can fly around, but you have less durability. There's the prowl suit, which is like speed oriented, I think, and then there's a heavy suit that you're just a giant tank, and that's the one you're supposed to use the swords for. Because the swords are like the close combat weapons, and it's a little Monster Hunter-y.
Yeah.
In that regard, I don't find that the melee stuff works too well.
No,
in this.
it felt
it's better.
really
It's
weird.
better to just have like some powerful distance weapons, stay away from these guys, and deal with that. And then there's like you can.
Does the enemy variety ever change?
Oh yeah, like there's more and more as you go along. It just takes these games take their time. I mean, and the thing that like kind of sinks it for me after a while is how short the missions are. Where like games like this where like it's so brainless and so like just sort of like mindless kind of, it's fun but it's also sort of dumb. Don't give me a lot of time to think about it.
Yep.
Like the problem, like once you like
once that happens, it's all over.
Once I get to that mission select screen that takes like 3 button presses to get through, I have enough time to think about, wait, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Why am I doing this? But I mean, if you like Earth Defense Force, this is probably as polished as it gets. For whatever that's worth.
Oh, this is way more polished than any
Yeah.
EDF before it. I mean, it's not even in the same class.
I will say that there's there's a mechanic in this where you have a booster thing on your pack, and if you get knocked down, you can boost out of it, but you've only got 5 boost charges, and if you run out, the thing overheats, and you have to wait for it to, just like the usual thing.
Yeah, it's cool.
Power up. But like sometimes if you're in the middle of some enemies and they keep knocking you down, and every time you do the fast recovery thing, you use up a boost point, and if you use them all up, you get overheated, and then you die. Like if you're in the middle of everything, and you're still trying to get away, like you can hit like kind of things where the enemies are relentless and annoying enough that they will just keep knocking you down. You never get a chance to kind of recover.
I died in this a lot.
It's hard. Like,
I died within the first 5 minutes of
I have
starting
died
the game.
more in this game than any other Earth Defense Force. I'm playing on normal. Some Earth Defense Forces, like you're supposed to play on easy first until you build up your arsenal. I feel like normal's doable on this, but you can die real fast. Like there's.
I did. I died several times.
If you're not especially if you're not upgrading your hit points regularly, which I have been, but even so, I'm still at the point where like if I take 3 bad hits, I'm probably dead. You can't play co-op, which helps because you can revive each other with certain items. The way the items work is you equip various items, and you've got kind of like a point system where you can only equip so many things because each thing costs a certain number of points.
Just like the pick 10 from Call of Duty.
Kinda, yeah. And and so you can equip everything from like grenades to healing items to tanks and gunships. And the trick is that after every mission, they tally up your ratings, and you get money based on how well you did, and if you used items of any kind, you get docked from your money of having used. So like if you use like a grenade, maybe you get docked like 90 points, whereas if you use a tank, you're docked like 3,000.
Yeah.
And the trick is that eventually you start running into situations. I ran into situations where I'm like, I can't beat this without a tank. So I brought in a tank.
To start using it. Yeah.
And what you saw in the footage, there was like the Scorpion mech thing you were driving, and like you can get flying ships, and like there's a lot of stuff to play with in this. Tons of customization on the characters, clothing and armor, and all the upgrades of all the various weapons, and I have like 100,000.
The character customization was pretty impressive, actually.
yeah.
I was surprised. I mean, the characters don't look great, but there's a lot of options.
Yeah, you can mess with stuff. Constantly unlocks to play with and put on the character, add to the guns, or new guns get unlocked, and like there's all the different types of guns you can use. And look, some of the guns like I've found like they cost millions to unlock, and I only have like 200,000 right now. So I'm like, okay, so apparently this goes on for a while, and they want you to play the other difficulty levels, et cetera, et cetera. There's a full multiplayer mode with I think up to 8 players.
Have you tried that yet?
There wasn't a lot of people on,
yeah,
oddly enough. I got in a game with like 3 other people, and it was fine. It was fun.
So I'm guessing this game is a discount title.
No, this game costs $60.
Oh, it's a full price game.
It's a full price game, or unless you buy the Ultimate Edition, which I think is $89, which includes the season pass and a bunch of extra stuff.
Wow.
So yeah, that's
this should be a budget title.
It will be soon enough.
Yep. You give it another 2 weeks.
If you're a fan, you know what you're getting into. It's cool. Also, another thing.
Yeah, will fans of the series enjoy this?
Absolutely, it's the same game. It's the same game. It just looks different.
Pretty.
I think it looks better. Some people might not like the more realistic look, but I think it's cool. The other thing that I think is interesting is there are weapons in this game that have active reload on them.
Oh, really?
From Gears of War, which is a mechanic. I do not understand why more people don't steal that mechanic.
Yeah, it should have been stolen so many times.
So it doesn't do the thing with Gears of War where if you get the perfect reload, you have powered up ammo. What it does is it halves the reload time. And reload time in this game is very important because all the time you're spending reloading is time you're
getting attacked.
It's 14,000 ants coming at you.
Yeah.
So I had a rocket launcher that had that, and like it changed the game. The fact that I could have the time it took to reload that and keep firing rockets at these things, awesome.
Make a big difference.
So I asked Cliff that once. I'm like, how come more people don't steal that idea? He's like, I don't know. I thought it was great.
It's great. Yeah.
He's like it seems like it'd be pretty simple to implement, but that was one of the things he didn't have an answer for that. He's like, he thought that was going to be like and I did too. When I first played Gears of War, I'm like, oh, this is going to be the new paradigm. Like, this is going to be what everybody uses for reloading stuff now. And almost nobody does it. But here we are.
Yep.
Earth Defense Force.
Only EDF,
which is also another thing. I was like, I feel like they looked at Gears of War very hard for like what Western audiences like.
Oh yeah, the over the shoulder thing.
And that's probably how
they're
that got in there.
They're only about a decade behind, but okay.
Yeah, but you know what?
It still made the game better.
Yeah, it's something.
Absolutely.
It's cool. I do kind of miss some of the cheesy stuff in the old games, like where you'd shoot these giant robots and like they'd like wiggle around and like bounce around and stuff, ragdoll. But you can knock their aim off doing that. But like, it works. Like it's and the destruction's cool. Like the nighttime stuff actually looks pretty good.
Yeah.
For what it is.
It's by far the best looking EDF game. I don't think any of the other ones even come close. But it's $60. If you've played these games before, you know why $60 is a little steep. Is this out for PC?
I don't know.
Or is it just console?
I have it on PS4.
Yeah, I have the PS4 version too.
I don't know if it's on PC. The others have come to PC.
Yeah.
Like most of the recent ones
I kind of assumed it was.
So, if it's not now, I bet it will be.
Yep. Okay, so there you go. Earth Defense Force Iron Rain. What do you think the Iron Rain means? What does that have to do with?
Iron Rain?
Just meaning that like robots coming from the sky?
That or bullets or something.
Oh,
just like, shrapnel.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think mainly it's just like, it's a cool thing that sounds like gun stuff, and Westerners like gun stuff. So it's Iron Rain.
There you go. All right, let's move on to our next
call
topic.
It Infinite Ant Discovery or something like that. Yeah.
Next up, we're going to talk about another story that broke today. It's actually great because some of the topics we had in the show before were like borderline.
Mm-hmm.
We were able to push those out for some of the stuff that broke today. And another story that broke today, well, it actually kind of broke yesterday, but the full reveal was today. And that is that Capcom is working on its own micro console called Capcom Home Arcade. Mm-hmm. Maybe we should just let people watch this trailer because I will say this much. It shocked me when I saw it for the first time. Maybe some of you guys were on Sifted today and you already saw this. It is not your typical micro console. In fact, calling it a micro would be a really bad idea because it's gigantic. It is, and there you see it, basically a micro console built into dual arcade sticks. Mm-hmm. That's the best way to really describe it, I think.
You could also describe it as ugly as hell.
It's a crazy idea. I love how they use their logo as the form factor for the whole thing. It's like, And the buttons, like the buttons are colored like the logo. It's like you can't see them. They don't stand out from the face of the console. It's very bizarre. It has 16 games. Is that right?
Yep.
16 different games. And I will say this: the selection of games.
Yeah, there's a few things in there that I never thought we'd see released in market again. Mainly Aliens vs. Predator. Cyberbots has never come to the U.S. Has never been released in the U.S. There's a couple of gems in there. However, 16 arcade ROMs for $200+
Yeah, so
is not really cool. I mean, I know you're mostly paying for this stupid dual stick thing, but like, wow. Like, talk about holding one of the classics hostage in that. I mean, I'm hoping at some point we get the same collection on like Switch or like standard consoles without the sticks, because it would be a shame to like not. It'd be a shame to go through the effort of getting the Aliens vs. Predator license permission back to put that game out again and not release it on something other than just this.
Yeah, so this costs, the only price they've announced so far is for Europe. And in Europe, it's €230. So US, this is going to be anywhere...
At least 200.
At least 200. It'll probably be closer to 250, depending on the conversion rate when this comes out. And it's... When does it come out, actually? Oh, October 25th. So there's time for the exchange rate to actually change. So we don't really have a good idea exactly what the U.S. price is going to be, but it's going to be at least $200, at least. And as Matt alluded to, yeah, okay, you get it. Arcade sticks are expensive on their own, and they've built this micro console into the arcade sticks, but man, even if it does end up being $200 in the U.S., which I don't think it will be, I think it'll be $250. If it's $200 in the U.S., who's going to buy this, Matt?
Not me. And if
Nobody.
And if I'm not buying it, you got a problem, because this is my alley.
It's your bread and butter.
It's my lane.
It's insane that they would make it this way. Like,
I mean, I would buy this collection, like software-wise.
If you just buy like a $40 disc or whatever.
I mean,
with the
Alien vs. Predator is one of the beat 'em up classics. What's that other one?
Actually, can you go back to that screen that shows all the games and just pause it there for a second, Sam?
Yeah, what was the Armored? I can never remember the name. Armored Warfare, I think it is. That's a great, like, there's that period where they just did those side-scrolling beat 'em ups for Capcom, and like they were great. Like the Aliens vs. Predator, Armored Warfare.
Final Fight is in there.
Final Fight's in there,
right
but
there.
it's also not like Armored Warriors. Is that it? Armored Warriors.
Eco Fighters.
Eco Fighters.
Strider.
I mean, Strider's cool, but I have it on other things.
Yeah. Puzzle Fighter, Ghouls and Ghosts.
Cyberbots is fun. I mean, it's a fighting game
Fight.
that never really came here. It's weird that there's so few fighting games on a giant
That's built with arcade sticks.
To the point that you know, I guess they're going for also co-op, but Captain Commando. But it's also like a little disappointing that we didn't get. I think Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. Was it Cadillacs and Dinosaurs? Was them or Data East?
That's Data East, I believe. Yeah.
I mean, there's some good stuff in there. Things I didn't necessarily think would ever be released for sale again.
1944 is a great game.
Yeah, but it's
been on collections before.
Yeah, Ghouls and Ghosts, arcade version of that. That's cool, but it's like for that kind of money with that kind of setup. Also, I hate combination 2-stick things, because you got to sit too close to people and like you're jerking it around all the time, and like it's moving around. Like it doesn't really work too well. It doesn't work too well on laps compared to like standing in front of a machine.
Yeah. I think this whole thing is just insane.
And it's ugly. I mean,
completely insane.
Nothing against the Capcom logo, but that is ugly as hell.
It is crazy. I mean, so it has Wi-Fi, but apparently you can't play against other people online. It's just for leaderboards.
Just leaderboards.
So you spend
leaderboards,
the money.
Worth it at twice the price.
It's like this whole thing boggles my mind.
Super weird.
Now, I was talking earlier about, hey, you think this might be something worth buying as a collector? I think this is something as a collector that it's worth buying.
I mean, certainly you'll hit a point where they're hard to get because no one buys them.
One, I don't think they're going to manufacture a ton. And two, I don't think anyone's going to buy them.
At the same time, I thought the same thing about a few other collector-related things for Capcom over the years, and that stuff's all worthless now.
Really?
So I mean, it'll be worth something in part because it's the only home release probably we'll ever see, unless this collection comes software only to the consoles and PC. Aliens versus Predator on a home version of Aliens versus Predator is like something I never thought would happen.
Yeah, that's really the big get here, I
yeah.
think. Yeah.
No question. The other stuff is all sort of like...
It's not worth $200.
Frankly, the other stuff is all things they could have released at any time in the last 20 years.
Absolutely. And like you said, they could put out this collection for like 30 or 40 bucks on a disc, and it really doesn't change anything. Like having these arcade sticks, does that really change the experience? Especially when you can't play online. It's just bizarre. I have no idea what Capcom's thinking with this. I admire that it's it's going into hardware and it's really kind of striking out and doing something different.
Yeah,
it's just not the right kind of different.
I just like, and it's a quality, mostly it looks like quality stick, Sanwa stuff, and
Sanwa.
It's fine.
Sticks,
but like,
yeah.
I just want an official release of Aliens vs. Predator I can play. I don't need it to be this weird, over-the-top, ugly stick thing. And also, if you're going to charge that much money, you should load that thing. That should have
Why are there 16 games?
That should have every Street Fighter ever made. Should have every Darkstalkers ever made.
Every Capcom fighter ever made. At least anything that hasn't been made in the last maybe you draw the line at like Street Fighter 4.
Yeah, I don't think it can do I don't think it can do Street Fighter 3 either. I don't think it has CPS 3.
Yeah.
But anything CPS 1 and 2 should be in there.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no reason it only has 16 games.
It's ridiculous. And no way to expand it, no way to... Yeah, it's like... I mean, I'm sure people will homebrew the shit out of it.
Yeah, they'll figure out a way. They'll stick a terabyte hard drive in it, and it'll become like... Actually, if you're looking to create like an emulation machine, maybe this is a pretty awesome thing to have.
Well, I don't know, because I think it depends like what kind of power it has, the processor or whatever.
Yeah.
At the very least, it looks like a great CPS emulator.
Yeah.
And there might be a way for homebrew people to sort of figure out how to make a CPS 3 board run on it. But I don't know. We don't know the specs.
I mean, those people will figure out how to make it work with like a Raspberry Pi or some crap.
Yeah, I mean, you don't know what's in this thing,
Yeah.
really. But again, I guarantee you, if you've got a couple sticks laying around, you could make one out of a Raspberry Pi for less money than it costs for this. I mean, obviously that would be illegal, but...
But I mean, how much do 2 sticks cost? Like $100, $150 probably
per, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess you are getting a deal on the sticks ultimately.
More or less. I mean, the price is not outrageous for what they're giving you in terms of hardware. It's just who wants that? I mean, I've got arcade sticks. I'm fine.
Yeah. It also appears that you can't use the sticks as just a regular controller.
Yeah.
That to me would be a huge value add that would maybe make this worth it. If it had ports...
Yeah, if you could plug this into a PC or a PS4 or something and use it, that would be different.
If it just, if it would work for Xbox, PlayStation, and Switch, then as just a great arcade stick controller, then I think maybe you're talking about something that maybe has a market, but as is, man, it just... Yeah, you can see the ports. I mean, they show the ports there.
It's a very strange choice.
The whole thing.
I mean, there is a USB there, so maybe you could plug it into something.
Yeah, it's possible. But I guess you'd need the female end to be plugged into the console, right? You need the male end.
Well, they'd both be male.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
I mean, you could, maybe. I don't know. I mean, usually these sticks are pretty... plug and play. So, and it says that on the thing. So, maybe,
it does.
I think it would be harder to make it not compatible with like plugging it into a PC or something than to just let it happen.
You would think,
but we'll see.
Yeah,
well,
we'll
actually,
see.
I won't see because I don't. I'm not going to buy that.
This is going to be one of those oddities where you never see it until like someday, like 15 years later, you go to someone's house and he has one.
Yeah.
You're like, holy crap, you bought one of these?
Like, look,
Can I try it?
If it crashes and burns and you can get it off Amazon for like $50 in 6 months, I'll
I'm
probably
there.
do
Oh,
that.
yeah, I'll
but,
definitely do it. Yeah.
I don't know. I love like that they brought back some of these obscure games in this lineup, but like there's not enough of them, and it's too much money for something that I don't need.
Yeah. Yep.
Much as I would love to have Aliens vs. Predator.
Not for that much money.
Not for that kind of money.
Yep.
Game wasn't that good.
No, definitely not. I don't know if I can think of any 2D game that's that good. That was one of the biggest sighs in the history of GameFace right there. No.
Yeah, just so close and yet so far.
Yes.
So hopefully they'll release the arcade pack as like some standalone thing on digitally or something.
I mean, if I were to fix that thing, I would make sure it worked with all the consoles. I would also make it so that you can break the sticks apart.
Yeah.
So if you want to just take
that
one
even
stick
makes
to a
sense because
buddy's
it's cap
house-
and com.
Right.
Like
Cap. I'll take the cap side. You got the com side. So weird.
Mr. Wolf, you have the com.
There's a lot of things they could do to make this worthwhile. Apparently, they're not doing it. So, I don't know. It's very bizarre.
It's weird. I mean, I know Capcom's in sort of a renaissance mode right now.
Yeah.
But, like,
that's not the way you do it.
This is odd.
Yeah.
This is a...
It's just crazy. Look at it.
Well, at least we're talking about it, I guess.
Capcom logo. Real bizarre. Okay, let's move on. We're going to talk about hardware now that we are really excited for. Ladies and gentlemen, today, for the first time, we got concrete information on the PlayStation 5. This isn't a leak. This isn't data mining. This isn't a retail listing on Amazon Canada or Walmart Canada. This is straight from the horse's mouth. Wired did a big feature with Mr. Cerny, who, as you all know, is the architect of pretty much every PlayStation platform ever. I think maybe not PlayStation 1, but he started working on in that capacity on PlayStation 2.
Definitely on PlayStation 2.
And he's a tech god for the most part, and he has been the one who's kind of unveiled all the new hardware for PlayStation. If you remember the PS4 Pro, he was the first person who came out and talked about that. And Wired got some time with him.
And of course, Knack.
Knack, yeah, that's right. He's also a developer, though. That's what a lot of people forget.
He made Marble Madness.
He did, yeah. He's made a lot of great games. He made the first Ratchet and Clank with Insomniac, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, he did an interview with Wired, and he gave up the first details of the PlayStation 5. Before we get into those details, why did this happen today?
Why not?
Just randomly out of nowhere, with nothing to tie it to. Why?
I think they knew that Microsoft's going to start revealing stuff.
Yeah. It knows next week, right, that the discless Xbox One is going to be unveiled, which is probably the first prong of its E3 attack from Microsoft's perspective. But otherwise, it's very bizarre, don't you think, to just do an interview with a magazine.
What if you're getting, if you get any closer to E3, you're sort of like...
They're not at E3.
Why didn't you just go to E3?
Yeah. I mean, I'm already saying that when they did this. We're 2 months away from E3, and I'm still like, why didn't you do this at E3?
They have nothing to show.
But still, I mean, you can still do this interview at E3, so you have some mind share, and you just don't let Microsoft take it all, because it just is so out of character. Because typically...
Is it?
Because typically Sony's...
Arrogant Sony is not out of character.
Sony's typically the counterpuncher. It waits. It's had the fortune of letting Microsoft always go first. And then, PAX brought up in this week about how they made fun of Xbox with the whole, here's how you share games on PlayStation, and Shu just hands someone a game, and it's like this, that, like,
which they shot in a hotel room the night before,
and you can tell, yeah. And
that all stuff happens so fast.
Yeah, and so PlayStation is the counterpuncher. It lets Microsoft announce its stuff, and then it comes back and says, oh, okay, well, we're going to do that better, or we're going to do something completely different that people are going to like more. They have given, and Microsoft now has 2 months to use this information to help shape how it's going to announce the next Xbox.
Are they?
What do you mean?
You think they're going to announce the next Xbox?
Well, they have the
E3?
whole specs of the PlayStation 5 now. They know what they need to beat. Before, they had no idea. Well, I wouldn't say that. I'm sure
everyone has some idea.
They had a clue. Because developers talk. Yeah, absolutely. So I don't want to say they had no idea. But now they know for sure the benchmark that they need to
at the very least, they can see
surpass.
what they've committed to.
Right.
Like now you've locked in a few things.
Yeah, it just seems so weird for me that Sony did this. And this time.
I don't know.
Not coming out this year. That was another thing.
No, 2020. I mean, I don't think did anyone really believe 2019?
No.
For a new system.
I mean, some people did, but they're gullible and don't follow the industry close enough.
I mean, I think believing 2019.
They're not sifters.
Believing 2019 for Last of Us 2 is weird enough.
Yeah.
They just wrapped mocap on that for one of the actors.
I saw that.
And I know they can do that. They can do that turnaround pretty fast.
They have in the past.
Yeah,
they've been in the mocap studio like 2 or 3 weeks before games have come out before. So that's not out of the ordinary.
No, but I don't know.
Still a little weird. Yeah. I would love it. That would be awesome. But not like.
You gotta get through Days Gone first.
Yeah, coming soon.
Really soon.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what part of this is like. Hey, we might as well talk about Sony because we're about to have our big game release.
I'm at a loss. I don't know why they did it, but let's now.
Maybe Cerny just made a command decision. I don't know.
It's possible. Yeah.
Like we got to get back in the news somehow.
It's possible. Let's start talking about some of the stuff that he shared, and he shared a lot. I think first on the top of everyone's mind, that people are probably concerned about if they bought into PlayStation 4 is PlayStation 5 going to be backwards compatible with PS4? It is, absolutely.
Of course.
They didn't commit to anything beyond that because you get to the PlayStation 3, you got to deal with the cell processor.
No, but I think PlayStation 4 stuff will all carry forward, and he did specifically note that, like, you know, there will be enhanced versions of things that also run on PlayStation 4. You know, like,
he basically confirmed that Death Stranding is going to be a bridge game.
Yeah, they're going to share stuff, and they're going to be. It is going to be interesting to me if the SKUs are the same. Like if you buy Death Stranding, will that disc just work on both systems?
That's interesting.
Or will there be a PS4 version and a PS5 branded version?
Well, if it's backwards compatible, right, because they could just say, well, if you want to play backwards compatible games on PS5, you have to download them instead of using the disc.
That's possible, but also using the Xbox system where you put the disc in and you just download the thing and it plays like that. That could work. But like my question becomes like, there's got to be the temptation to put out PlayStation 5 branded versions of these things just to have more PlayStation 5 content on the shelves.
Oh, absolutely.
So my question becomes, will they just be the same disc with a different label on them?
Probably.
Yeah, like are you able to buy like a PlayStation 5 and disc and put it into a PlayStation 4 and it just runs?
Yeah, I don't think that
it runs as a PS4.
I don't think the code's any different.
I would think not.
It's just scaling with the hardware, basically.
Unless there's some kind of compression difference.
They'll definitely slap the PS5 logo on it. Yeah. I guarantee you that. But I would not be surprised if you're able to buy a PlayStation 5 game and then put that disc into your PS4 and play it, like Death Stranding. Like when you buy Death Stranding, I would not be surprised at all if the jewel case, the boxing, the packaging, all is branded PlayStation 5, but you can take that disc inside it and stick it in your PS4 and it plays. I would not be shocked at all if that's the case.
Or like if it's like a half and half thing.
Yeah.
Where like the strip at the top is PS5
Yeah, they'll come up with some kind of
Because obviously PS5 I'm sure will not be blue. You know, PlayStation 4's color is kind of blue.
Yeah.
All the branding on the disc cases is blue.
Yeah.
So I bet PlayStation 5 will be black or something, and like so you have half black strip, half blue strip, so you know it works on both.
Yeah.
And then you'll have eventually at least you'll have, or maybe at launch, I don't know, you'll have PlayStation 5 only stuff, which didn't work tremendously well with the 3DS and the new 3DS thing.
No. But I think you're being kind saying that.
But we did only get like 3 new 3DS games.
Right. Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how they play that. But it is also good, like the idea that like I was pretty convinced from long ago that like you can't make people abandon their PS4 library. No way. Like that you've bought in too hard to that. You've attached it to too many things. It's gone too far digital. The PlayStation Plus stuff has been too integral in like kind of people's identity in terms of how they play their PlayStation 4. Like moving forward, you have to be able to take all that stuff with you. Yeah. And so I'm glad that they actually did. They realized that too, because that wasn't a guarantee, but it was pretty close to one. But okay, we're good. Yep. PlayStation VR will work with it, so you don't have to worry. So if you bought PlayStation VR, it is going to work just fine with PlayStation 5. Work real good. I mean, with that it's going to work way better. Yeah. Absolutely. You know what I should have mentioned about Jupiter is Mars? I didn't get sick playing it. I played it in VR and didn't get sick. Interesting. Yeah. So, and I'm playing on PS4 Pro. I got that for Christmas, so maybe that helps. 4 years in development. They've been working on it for 4 years. I'm actually surprised. I figured it would have been just as forever. Like, I figured the day the PS4 launched, they started working on the PS5, but it looks like they did take a little bit of a hiatus. Maybe they used that time to build the PS4 Pro. No, they used that time to make Knack 2. It's possible. That is possible. I don't know how day-to-day Cerny is involved with stuff like that. Yeah, not very. I wouldn't think. He's not. He's more of a consultant or something. Yeah. They call him when they can't get like a shader to work or whatever, and he tells them how to fix it. It's not fun. He's like, it's Knack. It's not supposed to be fun. Developers have been working on software for a while. He didn't say how long. He said, quote, unquote, for a while. So these dev kits how long has Death Stranding been in development? That's how long a while is. So dev kits have been out there in the wild with developers for quite some time. So at least they know the parameters that they're working with. And so all you people who bought the Xbox One X version of Red Dead Redemption 2, get ready to buy a PlayStation 4 version. You buy it again. Yeah. Because that thing's going to look good. It will look good. Absolutely. Although I don't know how it could look much better than it does on the X. Rockstar's got it, ray tracing. Ray tracing is going to change a lot.
Yep, let's start getting into some of the nuts and bolts of this stuff. It is coming with an AMD Ryzen CPU with 8 cores of the new 7nm Zen 2 micro architecture.
Sam, what does that mean?
Yeah, we quizzed Sam on this before we started the show. Sam read the specs for PlayStation 5 and he was like, I think it's a different language. He couldn't understand it.
This might as well be in Latin.
Yeah.
I said I'm glad there's 2 of them.
Yeah. Basically, they're getting a lot of processing power on a very small die, is what it comes down to. It's the process, the 7nm process, means that they can, and the power dispersal, the heat dispersal from it, it's all like bleeding edge tech. It's basically the best you can get right now.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, it sounds like they have also been listening to the complaints about the noise of the PlayStation 4, which mine is not particularly loud. But
Mine's
I know
not either. My Pro isn't. My old one was.
Some people have had, it seems to be a build quality or a tolerance thing.
I played Spider-Man, and I thought that thing was going to blast off of my
Sometimes
entertainment center and go straight to the moon.
I'll tell you what actually did make my Pro make a lot of noise was Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Not Odyssey, Origin. Assassin's Creed Origin, when I would go
I am not surprised by that at all.
Well, no. When I go to the menu screen.
What?
With it, like the map, like it sounded like a jet taking off.
Wow!
And I asked some of my Ubisoft, like, why is it doing that? If I left it, because I'd leave it on the map and I'd go do something, and I come back and be like, I'm like, what's wrong? Why are you freaking out? I mean, I put it on the map. I guess like the map, if you have like a map screen or a menu screen, and you don't like tell the game don't run the frame rate forever, it can just like. It can be like it's like running a Flash program at like super high frame rates, and like you'd never know, but it's like basically like overheating the machine.
Wow!
And Origin would cause that. Sometimes.
I have never heard my PS4 Pro.
I don't know if that's exactly what Origin was doing, but if I left it on the menu on like the map screen, it would sometimes the cooling system would just go crazy, and I just have to go back to the.
You're right though. They're focusing on heat and things like that with the PlayStation 5. This CPU will help with that a lot.
It will, although it sounds like they're really focusing on headphone quality audio.
3D audio.
Yeah, which means hopefully you won't be able to hear it through your headphones. I mean, I don't play with headphones. I do all
the time.
I have a surround sound system that I'm like, if I don't have to have something on my ears, I'm not going to.
I have a wife who sleeps in the room next to me.
Right.
So I have to put the headphones on for my late night gaming, or she wakes up and comes out and gives me the business. So I will appreciate that, but it was interesting that Cerny, in the first public statements about the PlayStation 5, made such a big deal about the audio.
Yeah, well, he said he was frustrated that the audio jump from 3 to 4 was not particularly noteworthy.
Well, he said from 2 to 3 and 3 to 4. Yeah. It's all been the same. It's just been 5.1, 7.1 surround sound. This is 3D audio. They said the audio can be tracked from 8 different directions. Above you, below you, on the sides, not just in front and behind.
Yeah, and this is where the ray tracing is also going to be used in a more innovative way.
For audio.
Because you can use the way that ray tracing, like the idea is like you show that the light bounces off something and how it illuminates something after bouncing off something else. But you can use that same tech to bounce audio waves off something and determine whether you'd be able to hear that sound through a certain material or on the other side of a particular obstacle or something. And I think I'll put a bet down right now. That is going to be one of the big features that Last of Us 2 only does on PlayStation 5. That you're going to be able to use, like, basically turn off all the UI stuff and do stealth just by hearing where footsteps are and whether something's muffled through a door or over. I think they're gonna like.
That has to be an option.
They're going to take the stealth to, but I think you're going to be able to play in like a pure mode that like uses the 3D audio to basically take the stealth in that game to the next level, and it's only going to be possible through the ray tracing tricks.
Yeah, and so for people who have like crazy surround sound.
Now, to be fair, that is a hard sell on a game box.
It is,
but
you need a paragraph instead of a bullet point.
To me, that when he said this stuff about the ray tracing audio thing, that made me think. That is something Naughty Dog would be instantly excited about. That's totally something they would do. Yep. So I think that is going to be one of the big. But the thing is, like, it's a tech trick. It's a hardware trick. It's a sound, tech trick. But it's something that makes gameplay different and better. Like that's a good example of like, it's like a cool like kind of tech nerd thing. but it's going to change how you play that game if you
yeah.
were to pick that hypothetical mode. Like I think that's a really cool idea.
Yep. Next up is using a Radeon Navi GPU, as we said, with ray tracing, up to 8K.
Yeah.
And they said that they couldn't even obviously show them 8K because
they didn't have an 8K monitor.
There's no content.
Yeah.
They have no 8K games to even show, so they showed him the demonstration on a 4K monitor instead of 8K. But they say it's going to be capable of 8K. What do you think that ultimately means? Okay, it's able to push out 8K signals, but what do you think that means for what we're ultimately going to play?
I mean, what it means is
It means 4K we're going to play.
Well, you can play 4K. I mean, obviously 4K is going to be intended to be the default, in the way that 1080p was supposedly the default this generation, unless you're playing an Xbox One.
Yeah.
The 8K thing, I mean, that's a ways out. You're starting to see those TVs sold now for 8K.
For almost $8K.
Mastering
For more
stuff,
than $8K
mastering stuff in 8K is kind of ridiculous right now. I don't think you're going to see wide adoption of that for many years, several years. I mean, studios are just getting done remastering stuff in 4K, for God's sake. 8K is about the limit of film. Like if you were to just take raw a 35 millimeter film frame, it would be an 8K image, more or less. You're talking about the upper limit of analog film quality. So this is about as far as it goes until we start plugging things into our brains directly or something.
Yeah, I mean, you won't need, once you get an 8K TV, conceivably, you really would probably never need to buy a TV again.
That's why all these companies are terrified.
Yeah, that's why they're not giving us 8K.
There's still time to go. The 8K, I mean, you're probably looking in the same way that 4K was this generation. If you're talking about 8K, is like, yeah, probably some stuff can run at 8K. I probably run at almost 30 frames a second. It'll be one of those, like, that'll be the trade. If you really desperately want 8K, that'll be the performance versus resolution trade-off next gen. But frankly, I think if you got a lot of stuff running at 4K, a solid 4K at a steady frame rate, 30 or 60, whichever it ends up being, I'm pretty happy with that. Like, 8K is more of a future proofing that probably is not going to be as robust as they want you to think it is right now.
Don't you think that they'd be able to get higher frame rates than 60 at 4K? Or do you think that they will just make the games look so good that they won't?
No one will ever prioritize frame rate over resolution.
Yeah.
Like that. You don't sell games on frame rates, you sell them on pretty pictures.
Well, it depends on the game.
If you can
There's
make
a few games where frame rate matters.
Yeah, but you're never going to see that as like a bullet point beyond like the hardcore. Like I mean, yeah, Call of Duty runs at 60 frames a second, but do you ever see them brag about that in the commercials? No, because the mainstream audience doesn't give a shit.
They do in the interviews, but
sure, but
not
like for us, sure, but not for like the people that make it the hit.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
It's got to be pretty before it runs at a high frame rate. And if you can make it run at 60, great. But like that's about it. I mean, yeah, you are getting to the point where you probably have some market for 144 hertz. But I feel like 60 is plenty good enough for the mainstream market.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like one way or the other. So I don't think you're going to see 4K 60 as a default target, because I think you're always going to people are going to always want it to be
push the envelope
prettier, and you're going to end up at a 30. But you never know. It's scale. The hardware is powerful and scalable enough that you might be looking at like a very standard situation of, do you want to run at full resolution with a lower frame rate, or do you want to run at a lower resolution with higher frame rate? And generally, I will pick the latter.
Yeah.
But we'll see. We'll see what it is. I mean, they got a lot of power in this thing.
Hell yeah, they do.
Certainly, your PS4 games will run at 4K 60, I would think.
Yeah.
God of War is gonna. I mean,
it's blistering.
I'll buy this thing at launch just to play my favorite PS4 exclusives.
Yeah, seriously.
On more powerful hardware.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to see them do it with no load time, apparently.
Yeah. One thing they did mention that I thought was interesting is PlayStation VR has now sold 4 million units.
That's a lot.
That was mentioned by Cerny in that interview. I was shocked by that. I was like, okay.
That's like twice what I thought it would be.
Yeah, I was surprised to read that. And it also explains why they made the point to say, you know what, that's going to work on PlayStation 5 as well. Maybe the biggest thing of all is a specialized SSD hard drive with raw bandwidth higher than any SSD available for PCs. They're saying it's 19 times faster.
Yeah, and the demo he showed was fast travel on Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Which on a PS4 Pro, it's 15 seconds of load time, and on the PlayStation 5 dev thing was 0.8.
Yeah.
It's basically no load time.
That's crazy.
And as Tim Rogers
like
said,
Flash Media
as Tim
almost.
Rogers said on Twitter, when am I going to look at Instagram now?
Yeah. It's like I said, we were talking about...
You get so much done during load screens.
Yeah, I do. Like we were talking about that a couple weeks ago about how I don't notice load times anymore because as soon as the game starts loading, I just start looking at social media or whatever on my phone. 8.8 seconds. That's insane.
Yeah, but that also, it's not just like, oh, no load times. It's like if you can access the hard drive that fast, that changes how you can develop. That changes a lot about how you can make a game work.
Because he also mentioned that basically the buses that let all the components of the PS5 communicate are gigantic pipes.
Yeah,
and just like the input...
It's the opposite of the PS3.
Yeah.
Where the PS3, they had to add the sound processor and the GPU after the fact when developers refused to write their own graphics engine every time they wanted to use a cell processor for anything.
Right.
Because that was the original idea of the PS3, is it was just those cell processors. And whatever you wanted the game to do you had to tell the cell processor to do it. And all the devs that they showed it to were like, we're not writing our own audio engine every time we make a frickin' video game. Put a sound processor in that thing. But the problem with the PS3, in some degree, was the pipes were not big enough.
Yeah.
Like you were constricted by how quickly the components could talk to each other.
Yep.
And on this one, they've built this thing to take advantage of this high-end, crazy SSD, which, like, I admit, like, the rest of the specs they're kind of throwing at us are pretty close to what I was expecting them to do, because I always thought they had to blow the doors off the hardware on this thing, because, as Cerny even said, you have to have a jump between this gen and the next gen that you can really see and look at and point to. But I didn't expect them to go this hard in on the SSD. That's a really interesting choice, and it makes me wonder what they've got up their sleeve on this thing, even going beyond the idea of games. And I wonder how big it is.
Yeah.
Because this doesn't sound like something you can replace.
Nope.
A lot of people did take their PS4 hard drives out and replace them with their own SSDs. But if this is that specialized,
No, this isn't an off-the-shelf
anything you
SSD.
replace is going to be a downgrade.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we mentioned, physical media is a go. PlayStation 5, there will be a disc drive in it. Although they did not, when they asked them if there would be a version without a disc drive, Mark Cerny's exact quote was, "We are cloud gaming pioneers, and our vision should become clear as we head toward launch." Meaning, yeah, we're probably going to make like a disc-free version.
What kind of Nostradamus shit is that? Like, that's like,
yeah.
It's like he played the wrong sound clip or something.
Yep. So that's the information that we have. That's everything that Cerny divulged to Wired. Now, do you think this is feasible? I mean, this basically sounds like they went to 100 PlayStation fans and was like, what do you want the console to have? And they're like, oh, it's got to run in 8K. It's got to have this SSD that's 20 times faster than any other SSD. Like, it just seems crazy.
It seems exactly what they have to do.
But how much is this going to cost?
It's going to be $500.
They did not talk about RAM yet.
They didn't talk about RAM. They didn't talk about cost. They didn't talk about price.
Yeah. And not release date, other than it's not
other than
coming
2020.
this year. Yeah. Did they say 2020?
They said 2020.
Oh, they did. I missed that somehow.
I mean, the Wired article said 2020 all through it.
I just saw it where it said not 2019.
Yeah, no, 2020 I've seen everywhere. I've seen it summed up. 2020, 2020, over and over, which is pretty much exactly what we expected.
We said it was, yeah.
I mean, this is exactly what they need to do. What they're describing here is exactly what the PS5 has to be. And I think it's going to be 500. You can't go over 500.
So he mentions in the article...
Maybe they're going to take a loss on it, because none of this shit's cheap.
Well, he mentioned in the article that he has an external SSD drive for his PlayStation 4 Pro that costs more than the PlayStation 4 Pro. Mm-hmm. And the PlayStation 4 Pro is still like $400.
Yeah, but if you get a big enough, I mean, you're talking about like 5 terabyte SSD drive, that's easily more. I mean, I looked into that for a while.
Yeah, it's crazy expensive.
I decided it was not worth the trade-off.
And so you're getting a custom one made. I mean, obviously you're buying in bulk, so you get a cut at that. But still, man, holy crap!
It's the price you got to pay to stay on top.
I just don't know. I mean, they're gonna have to eat a lot of the cost, like a lot.
I think you're right, but I think they're on board.
That would be awesome. If they will give us this machine at 500 or less,
I don't think
they will dominate.
Sony is not crazy enough to ever say $599 on stage again.
Yeah.
That I am convinced that they will never price, even if they have to price another system they will make it
572
They'll make it 650. They'll make it 650 or 570. Like they will never say $599 ever again.
I definitely agree with that one.
And I think if you're going beyond that, obviously you're in 3DO territory, and that's crazy.
Yeah.
My guess is 500.
I mean, I agree. I don't think you can ask much more. You can't ask any more than that for a console, or people are going to rebel against it.
I mean, unless you want to do a couple different SKUs and,
taking out a disk drive is going to save you $20.
Pay an extra $100 to get more space on the hard drive, but like when you're dealing with this SSD, I feel like you can't offer that kind of variability without like a massive price change. So who's going to pay an extra $100 for another 1 terabyte or something? That seems, if you can even cost that. I think you're going to be looking at a one SKU $500 machine.
It just sounds too good to be true.
Maybe, but like it's time to I think this generation coming up is going to lock a lot of stuff down. I think a lot of stuff's going to change. A lot of stuff's going to finally coagulate that has been sort of brewing and formation. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. You know what I'm trying to say. It's like everything's sort of vaporous right now, and at some point in the next generation, it's all going to come together. We're going to see where it's all going to go and what the next kind of zeitgeist is going to be. And Sony needs to make sure that they are the system everybody has, especially if you're going to end up launching simultaneously again, which it looks like they might. Mm-hmm. So you got to have a reason this thing is going to be worth buying over the Xbox. And for me, the reason it's worth buying over the Xbox is going to be Sony's first party lineup. It's always going to be, I'm going to have a PlayStation because I want to play the stuff that Sony publishes themselves.
And that to me is what Sony has done this generation.
For sure.
It went from a platform where I'm like, yeah, I like most of its exclusives to, I can't go without playing these exclusives. Yes. I mean,
certainly that's the difference between PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4.
And the difference between PlayStation and Xbox, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really where it is
you're
now.
Still at a point where Xbox needs to convince me more.
Nintendo can still compete first party,
sure.
But Microsoft can't.
But Microsoft is the one that has to prove themselves to me, like, why do I need to buy your next system?
Yeah. I mean,
because look, even if Sony doesn't announce anything concrete, I know God of War 2's on there.
Yeah.
I know there's going to be stuff that is going to be, all-time great stuff on that system that's coming out of Sony themselves.
Oh yeah, Horizon Zero Dawn 2.
Horizon 2.
You can just go on and on. It's like you have to own the PlayStation, no doubt.
So yeah, I mean, and you have to own a Switch if you want to play, or whatever the subsequent system will be. A few years from now, if you want to play Nintendo's output, which I think most people who like video games in general do.
Yep.
Microsoft is the one that has to convince me you're worth owning.
Like Forza Horizon's not going to convince me to buy a platform.
No.
Even a new Halo. I mean, the new Halo would just have to be mind-bending for me to spend $500 just to play it.
And that's the interesting part is it's almost Sony, this E3, it's almost Sony stepping back.
And being like, whatever.
What do you want to show us? What you got?
I'll say this. If somebody emailed me and it was like somebody I trusted, I knew was in the industry, and they're like, hey, Shane, like I have a scoop on PlayStation 5, and they sent me this information, I would not run it. I wouldn't believe it. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't. I'd be like, there's no way they're going to fit all that into a consumer-priced device. Yeah. I would be like, that's $1,000 console.
Yeah, well, we kind of had that conversation a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
On that, but it's like, I mean, I have always believed that the next generation systems are going to be, from a hardware perspective, they have to the crazy.
They are. I mean, apparently
exactly
they are
what
going to be.
Sony's doing.
It's nuts.
And the funny thing is, Sony was the one I wasn't sure if they were the one of the two. I thought if there's one of them is going to punt, it'd be Sony.
Yeah.
Because Microsoft's always been
now that neither one of them
pretty
can
dedicated
punt.
to power. Well, now Microsoft
can't punt.
I mean, I don't know. I don't think they were planning to.
Yeah.
But now you're going to be like, Microsoft's like, well, I guess we're going for the upper end of our scheme. I mean, you got to have a period where like you're kind of deciding, we're going to do it like this. If this is going to be the upper limit, it's going to be we're going for the slightly cheaper. But now it's like Microsoft's going to have to their headway that they've made has been because they had the most powerful system that sold better than they thought and plays multi-platform games better. So that means if you want to beat Sony at that in this one, you are going to have to put a alien super machine in this thing. I mean,
both of them are going to lose so much money on this hardware.
Yeah.
And look, it's probably not a big deal for Sony. It'll make all that money back 20-fold on software sales. But if you end up being the third wheel, the third guy out, man, it could put a hurting on you
Yeah,
big time.
I mean, Microsoft can absorb the cost, but at a certain point, Microsoft's got to look at whether this is worth it
right.
anymore.
Yeah.
Just from a standard,
Business perspective.
Meanwhile, Nintendo's like, what?
Yeah. We don't play your games.
The new one runs it at 1080.
Yeah, it's like I took this processor out of my cell phone and I put it here in this thing, and we're still doing great.
And apparently, the chat was talking about. Apparently, while we've been on, Nintendo announced Smash 3.0, and apparently there's a whole lot of crazy stuff coming to that.
Oh, really?
Smash Ultimate 3.0 is going to have some crazy additions, but I haven't seen anything because we've been here.
Well,
it's a big day.
It is a big day. We did see this past week though. Nintendo ran this fluffy commercial, and if you actually paid attention to the commercial, it shows Smash Brothers, and it shows a stage builder, the menu for a stage builder in the commercial.
Huh.
So there's going to be some kind of thing where you can construct your own stages for Smash Brothers coming this summer or whatever. And the funny part was, it came into our admin, and I looked at it, and I was like, oh, this is another one of those fluffy...
Yeah, here it is. From earlier, Smash Ultimate Joker release date. This is from Newsweek.
We'll get to that in the Q&A or
crazy.
whatever.
You're right. Stage builder and video editing.
Yeah. So it was crazy though. I didn't curate the trailer because they put those out one a week, where it's just like you and me playing Switch and having fun and drinking Kool-Aid, and they put out these fluffy things all the time, and I was like, oh, there's another one, and I just wiped it out and didn't curate it, and it turns out hidden in that fluffy commercial was a screen of Smash that showed the level builder. Crazy.
They're just having fun.
Yeah. So I think
they're toying with you.
I guess. So I think we can both agree, PlayStation 5, holy cow, 2 thumbs up. If I had 3 thumbs, I'd stick that one up too.
I mean, unless it does turn out to be $1,000,
right?
Then we're in
that would be the deal breaker.
Different term. But
would you buy it if it were $1,000? That's a good question.
I mean, once one of the sequels to one of the things if like a Horizon 2 or God of War 2 came out, I mean, I might wait and hope it dropped to 900 by then or something. But
I might pay it.
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna do that.
I don't either. But I just hypothetically, would you?
It would really depend on the launch lineup. if you put another Killzone out, I ain't buying that.
Yeah, but, definitely not.
I don't know.
I mean, just the fact that we're thinking about it, though, I think shows the power of Sony's
also the fact
studios.
Look, if you put that thing out for a ridiculous amount of money, but the reports from Digital Foundry or something come back and be like, God of War and Horizon Zero Dawn run at 4K, 60 frames a second with HD, all this, and they did all these enhancement things, and they've got ray tracing now, and they did all this, and I'm just like, all right, fine. Because look, they make some of my favorite games of the generation, and games I will go back to and play over and over again, including those two and Spider-Man and all. I mean, it's an investment in making these previous games that were great and I still love even better, in addition to the new stuff coming. That's the thing, is once you make this sort of an all-inclusive ecosystem, you don't have to tantalize me just with the new library. You can be like, hey, all those things you already own, they're even better now.
Yeah.
And that's a real thing.
It is real.
It's not like standard backwards compatibility. It's like, hey, you can play all your old games. You can play all your old games,
and they don't look like your old games,
and they look like new games.
Yeah,
and that's been a strength of Microsoft too on the Xbox One X. I'm 3 guesses what I'm doing after this show is over. I'm going to grab my Ninja Gaiden 2.
Okay, so I think that's going to cap it. That's pretty much all the information we have on PlayStation 5.
Yeah.
I think that will serve us well for many discussions to come, particularly once we get a look at what Microsoft's going to announce here in 6 weeks.
It really is like, hey, Microsoft, you're up.
Ball's in your court. Let's see it. I mean, it's crazy, dude. I cannot believe these are the specs. I still can't believe it. But
I'm not disappointed one bit.
No, not at all.
Happy with that.
Yeah. Again, depending on price.
Depending on price, but I really feel they're going to eat what they need to eat and call it $500.
Yeah.
Which is still a lot of money.
It is.
But
it's still way more than what we paid for
this gen. Yeah. But it's for that hardware,
it's worth every penny. It's worth double that. That's why I said $1,000 when you pay it, because that's really what it's going to probably end up being worth.
Yeah.
Or at least $750. It's crazy.
Imagine the days when we paid $750 for the 3DO.
I know. I didn't buy it.
I didn't.
Yeah.
I know.
I had a friend that did, though.
I had a roommate. My roommate sophomore year of college had one.
I had a friend that bought it when it came out. He worked at and the funny part was he bought it. He worked in car audio, And he worked at this crazy car audio place where they just installed crazy booming systems in cars. And that was where 3DO was sending that thing to be sold to like these audio shops. And he got it at cost, which still was insanely priced, but he got his at cost. And I got to go over to his house and play like the 2 games that were worth playing. And
Yeah, my roommate just had, he came from a super rich family and basically just like had all the toys, and he brought them to the dorm room and just left them there all the time. And I remember one time he told me, he's like, yeah, play whatever you want. So one time when he was out with his friend, he had all the stack of games, and so I was mostly playing Street Fighter because like that was the best version of Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. But I put in Supreme Warrior. You remember that FMV martial arts game?
Oh yeah.
It's like first person.
Yeah.
And I couldn't, I've never been very good at FMV games, so I just like stuck with it and figured and got through like 5 or 6 guys on it. And then he and his friend came back and they're like, "Oh, you're playing this." Did you get somewhere in that game?
You beat somebody.
Like they had been like trying. They'd been playing for like months and couldn't even beat one guy.
First guy.
Like, how did you do? And so like suddenly it became a Supreme Warrior party. Like, I remember playing Need for Speed, the original Need for Speed on that and stuff.
I mean, what I remember the most is like Dragon's Lair.
Yeah, but the
Because
idea
that was really the first console that could play the arcade perfect version of Dragon's Lair.
But I just remember doing, even like halfway through playing the Supreme Warrior stuff, I'm just like, I can't believe you paid $700 for this thing. Like, nothing on that justified that unless you absolutely needed to have an arcade perfect version of Super Turbo.
Yeah.
And most of the people, except for him, no one I knew did. Yeah. I knew some people who owned the arcade board, but they did not buy a 3DO.
Yep. All right, so it's time for our trailer of the week. One thing I want to do kind of an informal poll in the chat while we're watching the trailer of the week. Of course, that's also your time to get your questions in, and we'll answer your questions. But I want you guys to put in the chat while the trailer of the week is running, what is the maximum amount, and I mean maximum. Don't just like say, well, I don't want to suggest that they should charge this much. Tell us what the maximum is you would pay for the PlayStation 5 in the chat. And when we get back from the trailer of the week, we'll look at it and see what you guys are saying about it. Our trailer of the week, it has been a very slow week for games. As you can tell, we talked about a PlayStation VR game, an EDF today. So it's been a slow week for game releases, but probably the biggest release...
Talking about EDF because I don't skip EDFs. Except for Insect Armageddon. That one sucked.
Yeah. But probably the biggest release this week, oddly enough, was a game called World War Z, which is essentially Left 4 Dead set in the World War Z universe, if there's such a thing.
Now there is, I guess.
Yeah, I just created it right here on GameFace. But anyway, I think the game's actually already out. It hasn't been getting great reviews. Yeah. I didn't get review code till today, though, which is a little weird. I guess I just got it on release day. But anyway, the game is out, and here is the launch trailer. So there you go. Well, that poll thing in the chat worked. We need to do this more often. Everybody responded. Well, most everybody. There's a lot of replies in here. Let's see. I'm just going to go down and read them off. Ultimate Villain, thank you for subscribing via Twitch Prime, and thank you for waiting until this part of the show so we could recognize you. Let's see. $5.99, $5.99, $4.50, $600, $5.99, $9.99. $5.99, $4.50, $3.99. Someone will only pay $400. I think he may be waiting for the PS5 then. $500, $650, $500, $600, $600, $650, $500, $700, $500 max, $500. Okay, so not using math.
No.
I would say the average max most people are willing to pay is $600.
Yeah, I mean, $600 is the maximum I've ever paid.
Yeah,
$599
$599
$599 US.
Yeah. Sound Wizard, thank you for subscribing with Twitch Prime, man. Appreciate it. So yeah, it looks like most people maximum $600, and that's the breaking point. Thank you, Joaquin Dragoon, for the bits and the cheer. Appreciate it. Okay, I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the most anyone's ever really had to spend for a console, so it makes sense that is the most they'd be willing to pay.
Until...
I wonder, though, if it did come in at like $750, $800, if a lot of these people that are saying their max is like $500 or whatever, if they would break. I mean, people broke for the PlayStation 3. Everybody's like, I'm not paying that. And it still sold pretty well. Yeah.
I didn't intend to, and then suddenly we got word in. It's like, oh, Best Buy has a bunch of them down the street. And I remember I went with Morgan and Adam, and we went and bought PlayStation 3. And I still have it. It still functions. It's a 60 gig.
I have the 60 gig fat.
Yep, 60 gig fat. Still plays all the stuff natively.
I even shoved in like Jeopardy for PlayStation 1 like 9 months ago, and it works. It works. It's crazy. All right, let's get to some questions. W. Matthew, as always, this might be a question more for Matt, but which would you prefer? Now that we know the rough specs, would you rather use the extra power to get 60 frames per second or native 4K and better graphics? I prefer 60 frames per second over 30 and better graphics.
I don't care.
You kind of answered this already, I think.
A little bit, but also, like, I don't care. Like, I like 60 frames a second, but I also like pretty things. It's more important to me that this frame rate be steady.
I think it's game by game, honestly.
It is game by game. Like, I mean, Mortal Kombat's got to be 60.
Yeah, like Call of Duty. Could I go back to playing that at 30 frames a second now?
No.
Hell no.
But, like, in general, especially if you're talking about like, kind of like action games or RPGs or something, like say Sekiro or whatever, I like 60, prefer 60, but it's more important to me that it's steady. Like the thing that bothers me is not that it's 30 frames a second, it's when it's dipping to 22.
It's erratic, you know? And you can't predict how it's going to perform.
Yeah, so it's not a deal breaker for me to not be 60. But I do like it when there's options of, you know, more bells and whistles, lower frame rate, or you know, more streamlined graphics and 60.
I don't think we'll have to choose. I think these new consoles are going to be set up like PCs, where you're going to be able to go in and say, I want a better resolution, or you can dial back the frame rate and give me a better resolution.
I think the scalability has become enough of a thing in the console space now, especially for first-party stuff for Sony, that I would expect to see that pretty standard moving forward.
Let's see, the Legacy. Do you think PlayStation 5 will be released in spring or fall 2020?
Fall.
Yeah, I think spring's way too early. And I don't even think it's like a hardware problem. It might be a manufacturing issue. I think it's more content.
Yeah.
And look, he said that developers have been working on it for a while. The fact that he didn't say 2 years or a year means that it's been less than a year, at least in my opinion. So I just don't think there's content for it. It's great that it's backwards compatible, because technically there's tons of content available for it. But if you don't have something that really shows off that hardware, no one's going to buy it.
Yeah.
It's like no one's going to buy it just to play PS4
you want it
games.
in the holiday season. You want it in there for Black Friday. You want it to be the talk of the holiday season.
But I know I asked a question because the Switch obviously launched.
Right.
And it did very, very well in that window.
Right, but the Switch is... First off, the Switch had Zelda. Second, the Switch was kind of exciting in and of what it was, of itself.
Yeah, all on its own.
And also, I still think the Switch launched when it did because they needed to get out there. And it launched too early. I think that system launched too early in terms of how long it took them to get a bunch of their normal stuff that you would expect as a standard operating thing for a system in these days done, online, anyone.
Yeah.
But they had to get out front because they had a visibility problem basically in the mainstream gaming. They had the fans, but you had to make it something that people that weren't maybe on board with the Wii U were willing to look at and jump in on, and it worked.
Yeah.
I don't think Sony has that problem with this.
Okay.
I think you're looking at Godzilla versus King Kong here more than like something that needs to sort of differentiate itself.
Here's one from J. Reed Vic 7. With Tales from the Borderlands, original characters showing up in the Borderlands 3 trailer, is this the first time that something that Telltale created with a licensed IP ever ended up back in the source material? Also, is Randy being out front and doing magic during reveal basically a middle finger to everybody, including Take-Two PR?
I guess so. I don't know Minecraft very well, so I don't know if anything from Minecraft Story Mode has popped up in mainstream Minecraft.
Probably.
I don't know.
It probably was popping up while it was happening. Those synergies are usually pretty well aligned.
There are a couple portrayals of the Batman characters in the Telltale Batman games that resemble Gotham but I think that might have been more parallel than taking from game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Those are really the only two examples.
really
that we
it.
have.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anything Walking Dead really moved to the TV show or anything.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, I mean that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, why not?
I mean,
Tales from the Borderlands is probably the best Borderlands content ever made. So certainly in terms of narrative and characters, so you might as well leverage that.
Yep.
I'm sure Gearbox owns all those things outright anyway, so why not?
Yep. Also, it's a nice homage to Telltale.
As for Randy,
oh yeah, Randy's magic.
I don't know.
No, he just loves
it's
magic.
Just what he does. Magic.
He
is
just
his
wants
thing.
to subject people to his magic. I mean, that's really what it is.
Although he gets upset if you ask him to do magic.
Right. Well, I think a lot of magicians are that way, though.
Because, quote, he's not a trained seal.
Right.
Okay. Whatever that, I mean.
Exactly. Whatever
I'm
that
not
means.
asking to balance a ball on your nose. I just want to see you do something on a card.
Yeah.
But no, it's his thing. His uncle or his great uncle, whatever.
He's a great Blandini or something.
The great Cardini.
Cardini. Yeah.
And one of the all-time greats. You know, among magicians, if you say Cardini, everyone knows who Cardini was.
It's been interesting to see all these people that watch our stream that never commenting about their price for PlayStation 5. Get involved, folks. We're here every Tuesday night. Let's see. Here's one from Justin Horman. Fallen Order has been described as Force Unleashed, but good. What other flawed game from the past do you wish someone would give a serious try at making that game, but good?
I'd like to see Dragon Age, but good.
Well, I think a lot of people would argue with you that they think that it already has been good.
Yeah, well, they're wrong. Dragon Age, all the Dragon Ages have been bad in some way or another, in different ways. I give them credit for that. But I hate Dragon Age 1. I think the story is boring and generic. The only character I like or remember is Alistair, and the entire thing was built in the Aurora engine as kind of a test run, and it's very obvious. Like, I find it very primitive even for its time. Yeah. I didn't like it at the time. I like it even less now. I frankly, as someone who didn't like Dragon Age 1, did not particularly like Dragon Age 2, although I liked it better, blasphemy, and thought Inquisition was fine but boring, I am very concerned about Dragon Age 4 being sort of what Edmonton BioWare is sort of hinging themselves on here. So yes, I would like to see Dragon Age but good, which I'm hoping that's what Dragon Age 4 ends up being.
Yeah. I'm going to say Anthem.
Yeah, that's not a bad
I know it's crazy,
choice.
like with questions like this, to pick a game that's so recent, but I like the core of Anthem's gameplay so much that I feel like if they could get somebody to fix all the other parts of it, it could be amazing. So that's my pick. To Faust for you. Since the PlayStation 5 is using a custom-built SSD, do you think that they're going to sell proprietary SSDs in a similar vein to the way the Vita sold proprietary memory cards? Yes.
That would be very Sony.
I thought we already kind of hinted at this when we were talking about it earlier. At least I was hinting at it.
I didn't pick up on that.
Yeah. Yes, I think absolutely. Well, you were saying that you can't just go into a store and buy a replacement. And then I was like, exactly. That's like the whole idea, is that they have you buy the cojones anytime you need memory. And yeah, I think that's absolutely the case. But I don't think you're going to need to either. I think that...
Yeah, I mean, the difference there between that and the Vita is the Vita didn't come with that.
Right.
The Vita, you basically had to buy the stupid proprietary memory chip, or you could barely save anything. It was like a tiny little bit of onboard memory. I would guess that the SSD on this thing's going to be at least 1 terabyte, which is enough to at least manage.
Yeah.
You know?
You can get by with 1 terabyte easily. I mean, my PS4 Pro still wasn't full. And I even went back and like downloaded old games. And
My Pro's full with a 2 terabyte drive I put in it. But I keep a lot of stuff installed thinking like, oh, I'll go back and finish that any minute now.
Well,
and
Red Dead 2 takes up 100 gigs, so you
Yeah.
can delete that and install another 3 games.
I got that on my Xbox. Because my Xbox, I have like a huge thing. It's like I think it's a 5 terabyte.
Damn.
External that I stuck in it, and
No joke.
It's fine.
I bet it is.
It was like $80 on Amazon one day. I'm
Wow.
like, yeah, I'm gonna order that.
You got
Let's
a
do
great
that.
deal. Super Cordon Bleu. Now that Sony has more or less played their hand with the PlayStation 5, how likely is it that Microsoft outdoes Sony with the new Xbox specs? Is it even necessary to do so?
I mean, you at least got to be on par. I don't know if they'll be able to match the proprietary SSD. In exchange, they would probably just go hard line on the graphics power, I guess. you really are bleeding edge, number to number on this thing. So whatever they're going to pull out, whatever Microsoft's going to pull out, I would more say it's going to be comparable rather than beating it.
I think more than anything, Microsoft just needs to be in the ballpark.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to see another thing like where the Xbox One was just not, I mean, part of the
And
reason...
it needs to be more in the ballpark than the Xbox One was.
Yeah, and part of the reason the Xbox One had a problem was because it was largely designed by people who were designing it as a set-top box on a gaming system, and it had slow RAM.
Yep.
Because they wanted more RAM to run all the UI crap that horrible user interface needed and the OS needed. So they got slower, which meant cheaper RAM, so they could put more RAM in it. And that's one of the reasons the Xbox One was a problem in comparison to the PS4. This time I would guess that the RAM in the Xbox is going to be very fast.
Yes. Yep, I'd agree.
The one thing I will definitely say is like the RAM in the Xbox One, Xbox Next or whatever it is going to be top of the line.
Yeah.
That would be, I bet, where they spare no expense.
Yeah, but you're
Will
right.
that help them?
If it's
I don't know.
proprietary tech that Sony's worked on, there's nothing Microsoft can do about the hard drive.
Now I will say that
I mean, it could put a stock SSD in
or
it.
Microsoft. Look, Microsoft is also not stupid. They probably know that that's where some interesting, speed and access, speed of access to through your RAM and also through your hard drive are going to be key. And considering how sluggish the Xbox One is even today.
No, it still is.
Even today.
It's crazy. It also takes so long to boot the thing up, man. I mean, again, I have the base Xbox One.
Mine's still pretty slow. And
I
you should see how long it takes.
And it literally takes like 2 minutes before the green screen shows up. Then the green screen shows up and sits there for another 2 minutes. It's like just everything about that hardware is so clunky.
It doesn't take that long on the X, but it does take a surprising amount of time to check for updates.
It's
still
flipping through the blades on Xbox One is slow and sluggish. Chunky.
It's faster on the X, but it's still chunky. It's still like even browsing the store is just like really just
everything. It just takes forever.
So yeah, I would expect that to be a priority on this. So I think speed is going to be definitely on the mind of both Sony and Microsoft. We'll have to wait and see how much cost Microsoft's willing to eat to get these things in our homes. But in the past, Microsoft has been willing to eat a lot of cost to get the Razer in the house because they got Razer blades to sell you. But that's the question: is what are the Razer blades they're going to sell us? Because that's their big variable. Are all these things, all these developers they're buying, going to pay off?
Yep. A couple more. Majora Tom 91. Do you think we get full backwards compatibility with PlayStation 5, or will it be more like what Microsoft has done with Xbox One, where it's a little more curated?
It's full, I think. I think you're literally sharing hardware architecture.
Yeah. I'll say I didn't read his question maybe right at first. I thought maybe he was insinuating, is it going to keep going back generations to PS3, PS2?
No, I think he means in the way that, you only get backwards compatibility on the Xbox One when they add stuff.
When they specifically add the backwards compatibility.
No, I think it's going to be native.
Yeah, I think it'll just work like a PC, honestly. I
can't see Mark Cerny doing anything else. I mean, certainly it's what they tried with the PlayStation 3 until they decided it was too expensive to slap an emotion engine in every single system.
Here's Mitchell is alive. Should I get Days Gone? I'm worried.
Me too.
I can't answer that yet.
I don't. I can't tell you. I'm going to find out about the same time everybody else does.
Well, obviously, next week, Days Gone will be on the show. Probably Mortal Kombat. It depends on when the embargo is up for that. But both those games should be on the show next week, and we should be able to tell you them, but I can't help you right now, unfortunately. Let's see, one more if we have... Oh, there's tons more. Sorry, guys, I can't answer all these, unfortunately. Some are just people giving us comments. All right, here's a new person on our stream, and I want to use his question. Madiste, I believe is how you say it. First of all, thank you for watching the show, man. Appreciate it. You guys heard earlier about E3 that Sony is usually counterpunching Microsoft by going second. Do you see a Nintendo Direct type of Sony event some days after E3 to counter Microsoft?
I don't know. I mean, Sony has already directly said they will not be activating on or around E3. So maybe we would get one a month later. But Sony has and of course plans change. If Microsoft has something really strong, Sony might find it necessary to move. But they have already said, we are not doing anything at E3 or around E3. So right now, we have every reason to believe from Sony's own mouth, we will not see that. We will not.
Yeah, we'll see.
But we
I don't
also
know. It's not a terrible idea.
I don't think it matters.
I mean, look, if you think about
It's
it, like,
over a year
okay,
and a
we
half
got the
away.
initial information out there.
Well, look, the initial information's out there, which also means that because it hit the news cycle first, it's the first thing that's going to be mentioned in these news stories.
Yeah.
You know, but they haven't said it's PlayStation 5, but they're going to be, it's going to be the next PlayStation was already talked about in April. Now Microsoft is going to say, so Microsoft's already second banana there in the news cycle.
Yeah.
And you've got another year. Next E3 is E3 2020.
That's when you show the games, though.
Yeah, but like that's going to be the showdown. And that's when you're going to need to have people talking about these new systems, what they can do, which games they run better, which games run better on which system does this more, does that more, does that. I mean, that's where it's really going to matter. Like right now, I mean, I don't know. I still don't know what Sony's doing.
I mean, ultimately, it always comes down to the games. I
Yeah.
mean, that's just the bottom line. Hardware is hardware, but it doesn't mean anything unless there's great software to play on it. So it will ultimately come down to the games. The problem is that Sony has a huge head start on Microsoft where that's concerned.
Yeah.
Whereas Microsoft is buying studios now and getting games going at those studios now.
Well, a year
Sony
ago.
has tons of studios that have been creating games all along and have already created prequels to what are going to be sequels on PlayStation 5. Microsoft has its work cut out for it. I'll put it that way.
I mean, they've
Not impossible to overcome.
No, they're playing it as well as they can, I think, in terms of who they're buying and what they're probably going to attempt.
Yeah.
But like, they are the ones with something to prove, much more than the other two.
Yep, for sure. So that's it. That's a wrap for GameFace episode 164. Thanks for everyone on the stream. You guys asked great questions. I wish we could have got to them all. Another reminder for those of you watching on YouTube, please subscribe via Twitch Prime, or better yet, go to our Patreon and pledge. That would be awesome. Patreon cash is far more reliable than Twitch Prime, but if you can't afford it, you can give us $2.50 free every month with Twitch Prime as long as you're an Amazon Prime member. So instructions are down below. We'd really appreciate it if you're enjoying GameFace, and it seems like a lot of you are. So with that, we'll be back next week. We're going to have a big show with 2 huge games we're going to talk about. Until then, have a great week. GameFace is up and out.